Hijinks and Holly, A Pawpaw's Pet Bakery, Cozy Mystery. Book 4. Written and narrated by Lena Turner. Chapter 1. I'm so excited, I said. Missy and I closed early and headed to the square, where the official opening of the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee was taking place. My name's Tillie Moore. Tillie is short for Myrtle, but as you can imagine, I adopted the nickname pretty quickly in life. I currently reside in Sweet Haven, Michigan, but I spent most of my life in Alabama before catching my scoundrel of a husband cheating. He decided to leave me for someone newer. Shortly before that happened, my great-aunt had left me her house and a little bit of money. She also provided for my children's college education under the stipulation they attended her alma mater, the University of Michigan. So that was how we all ended up here. This was my second Christmas living in town. I had only arrived a couple of months before the last one and didn't know people well then. Now I felt ingrained in the community and had been looking forward to the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee, honestly, since right after the 4th of July. I was a Christmas fanatic and loved the decorations, even the snowy weather. Though once the holidays were over, I wasn't a fan of winter in January and February. The Jubilee has gone on for as long as I can remember, Missy said. She had lived and grown up in Sweet Haven, but had moved away, gotten married, and returned many years later, single. I had hired her a while back, a little nervous about the expense. Being a business owner wasn't for the faint of heart, but with the encouragement of my friends, I took the plunge, and Missy proved to be a valuable person on my team. She had really helped me grow the business. I think it's exciting. That's why I didn't mind closing the bakery for a couple of hours to watch the kickoff of the festivities. When I moved here, I opened a pet bakery. I had always loved to bake, but found I preferred to do so for animals rather than people. Not that I didn't enjoy making meals, and if I did say so myself, my coconut cream and chocolate pies were out of this world. I simply combined my passion for animals with my love of baking. Back in Alabama, when my kids were younger, I had baked treats for all the pets. They were always a hit, and even won a couple of prizes at fairs. After the kids reached high school age, I set up a little business trying to actively sell my goods, something my now ex-husband always made fun of. I got divorced and moved to Michigan, but the little bit of money my great-aunt left me and my divorce settlement wouldn't last forever. Plus, I wasn't one to just sit around, so I decided to bite the bullet and open the bakery. The rest, as they say, was history. I wasn't making a ton of money, but since my great-aunt had left me the house free and clear, and I owned my Jeep outright. My expenses were mainly utilities and food, though my animals ate far more than I did. You made the right call closing. I don't think you would have had any customers. All the locals and any tourists in town are going to be just as excited to see the Jubilee as the rest of us. As long as we're back after the celebratory hot chocolate toast, we won't miss anything. I agreed with Missy. Sweet Haven, which was located on the Michigan shoreline, was very much a tourist attraction. The small, sleepy town, with an actual population of about 10,000, would swell to quadruple the size during tourist season, which was Memorial Day through Labor Day weekend. However, there were quite a few people who had vacation homes here and would stick around. If one liked outdoor activities, there were some good cross-country trails. And then all through the holidays, from Thanksgiving to New Year's Eve, a lot of events happened on the weekends, such as this one. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the initial kickoff of the holiday season, starting with Santa giving a holiday toast over hot chocolate. The Boy Scouts were in charge of making the beverages, which was one of their yearly fundraisers. For a donation, one would get to sip hot chocolate, listen to Santa make a toast, and then either enjoy all the festivities or go about their merry way. I just hope the Boy Scouts don't run out. I heard last year they did, and it caused quite a commotion. Missy laughed. Nothing upsets this town like messing with its traditions, intentional or not. I see people are bringing their pets, I noted when we approached the town square. There were more than a few dogs on leashes. I wish we could bring Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles. I know. Honestly, I feel guilty for leaving them behind. They would love the attention they'd get here, but we wouldn't have enough hands to hold them and our hot chocolate. And you know how rambunctious they would be with all these people around. Beans, my pig, was well-trained and minded most of the time, but I understood where the phrase pig-headed came from. He could be very obstinate when he put his mind to it. Daisy, my St. Bernard, and Mr. Cuddles, my cane corso, were very obedient. Like I had just said to Missy, their size, combined with the fact there were 3 of them and only 2 of us, would have made it hard to handle them along with our hot chocolate. I would definitely bring them back another time, though. They loved being around people, and while some were sometimes put off by their size, most, once they got to know the animals, loved them. We walked up to the hot chocolate stands, where there was a long line. That was no great surprise, given the huge turnout. The Boy Scouts were working as fast as they could, and they were doing an efficient job. It didn't take long for us to get up to the counter. We have milk chocolate, hot chocolate, dark chocolate, hot chocolate, hazelnut chocolate, and white chocolate, one of the Boy Scouts said. He had to have been around 10 or 11, with a cute smattering of freckles across his nose, which was red from the cold. I think I'll take the hazelnut, I said. Me too, Missy agreed. Whipped cream or no whipped cream? The boy asked. What would you recommend? I said, in a very serious tone. I would recommend extra whipped cream. And if you don't mind me being bold, I would also recommend chocolate sprinkles. The boy was so earnest it was hard not to laugh. He was taking his job seriously, and he was so adorable. I remembered when my kids were his age. They were in school now, and I missed them. Both were studious, which I loved, but they were going home to Alabama this year. While I never wanted them to not have a good relationship with their father, I selfishly was glad to have them all to myself for a couple of weeks. I think we should definitely get whipped cream and sprinkles, don't you think? Missy's expression was earnest, though her tone was playful. Absolutely, I said, handing over my credit card and waving away Missy's objections as she reached for hers. Company outing. What's the point of business expenses if we don't use them? I said with a grin. Thank you. The boy placed our drinks on the counter and handed me back my card. He then gave us each a little spoon. This is vacation. You don't want to eat your whipped cream and get messy, he said solemnly. Good, I replied as he walked away. The stage is that way. I believe that's where Santa will make his grand entrance. Should we head in that direction? I asked Missy. Sure, but if I see something tempting to eat, stop me. I'm not hungry right now, but I swear this is the first Christmas season where I don't gain weight. Oh, please. You look just fine, but I'll be glad if you help me out by doing the same for me. I'm a sucker for fair food, and even though this isn't a fair, based on the smells already in the air, I can tell they have some of my favorites. On second thought, I don't know how long I'll be able to go without grabbing sugar donuts and hot apple cider from Shepherd Farms. Nobody grows apples like those folks. Maybe we can split donuts, I suggested. Missy nodded. Good plan. We walked to the other end of the town square, where the stage was, choosing to stand on the outside of the crowd rather than taking a seat in one of the chairs they had set out for the occasion. It wasn't really cold, still only in the 40s, and the sun was out. Missy and I both thought it was better to keep moving, so we decided to walk around until the event started. I glanced at my watch. Santa was going to appear in about 5 minutes. I couldn't believe how many people were here. It was nice there was such a crowd. Maybe after the event, they would go shopping downtown and spend some money. Since the end of October, business had really slowed down unexpectedly. I had hoped it would stay a little busier. 5 minutes till Santa kicks us off, a man's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. It wasn't one I recognized, but it got the message across. I'm going to run to the restroom really quick and get back before it starts, Missy said. Good. Just hurry. I heard the opening song is the best part. Missy nodded and headed off in the direction of the bathrooms. The seconds ticked by. A nervous energy electrified the crowd, which was exciting. I had spent most of my adult life in a town that wasn't nearly as lively. Even though this community had been around for a long time, it still seemed full of life. And I appreciated that. I felt a little anxious and hoped Missy would get back in time, but I forced myself not to dwell on it. She was grown, and she still had a couple of minutes before the start. Just as the thought went through my mind, what I assume was the master of ceremonies stepped up to speak. Friends and family. Though, as mayor of this town, I consider you all family, and I'm so glad you're here to celebrate the kickoff of Sweet Haven's holiday season. Please join me in a round of applause for Sweet Haven traditions. Now, without further ado, I'd like to announce our brand new Santa for this year. He's going to say a few words, and then we'll make our toast. Santa, come on out. Everyone looked expectantly at the stage, wondering if Santa would appear from the left or right. A few seconds went by, but there was no answer and no sign of anyone in the wings. Maybe he didn't hear me. He's probably busy checking his list, the mayor said in an attempt at humor. It's time to come on out, he called again. Your fans are waiting. Just then, a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, ran onto the stage. Something's happened to Santa, she explained breathlessly. He might be dead. Chapter 2. For a moment after Santa's elf announced Santa was dead, the crowd was completely silent. It was an eerie kind of quiet, like when the birds stop chirping before a solar eclipse. I glanced around, noticing the confused expressions on people's faces. Mine probably looked the same. One of Santa's elves screamed, "Someone call the police!" The outburst broke the silence, and the crowd buzzed with chatter again. I quickly pulled out my phone and called Ben, on his personal line, not 911. He had mentioned he was planning to come to the event kickoff, and I figured this would be faster. "Hey, Tillie," he answered. "Where are you?" I asked urgently. "I just pulled into the parking lot a minute ago," he said. "I'm heading to the main stage now. Is something wrong? You sound stressed." "You'd better hurry. One of the elves ran out and yelled that Santa was dead." "One of the elves?" "Yes, he told everyone to call the police." "I heard someone was already calling 911, but I thought contacting you directly might be faster," I explained, just as a voice came across his radio. "I'll be right there," Ben said, and the line went dead. I turned toward the side of the stage the elf had come from, which was also where I assumed Santa was. A small crowd of parents had already gathered there. I made my way in to join the group. As I approached, Ben came in from the opposite direction. "Everyone move back," he said in a commanding tone. The crowd shifted, clearing a path, and Ben went inside. A couple of minutes later, he came back out, and the elf who had raised the alarm walked up to him. I wished I could hear what they were saying, but I knew better than to get too close. Ben would likely lecture me later if I did, and we were getting along well. I didn't want to ruin that. Besides, it was best not to disturb him during the early stages of an investigation. "What happened?" came a voice from behind me, making me jump. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," Missy said. "It's okay. I was just distracted." "I see Ben is here," she noted. "I take it you didn't hear what just happened, of course. You didn't, not if you were in the bathroom." "Did something happen?" "We were getting ready for the event to start when one of the elves ran out and said Santa was dead. I called Ben, and that's why he's over there talking to the elf now." "You're kidding me. Do you think it's true?" Missy asked, her eyes wide. "I guess we'll find out soon." Paramedics arrived and headed toward the tent. Moments later, 2 more police officers showed up and walked over to Ben, who seemed to be giving them instructions. The officers began pushing the crowd back even further and taping off the perimeter. Missy raised her hand to her mouth, her face pale. "Oh my goodness," she murmured, eventually lowering her hand. "What is wrong with people? Who would do something like this, especially here, of all places?" I didn't have an answer for her. All I could do was watch while the investigation unfolded, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I scanned the crowd and spotted Hillary looking around. When I lifted my hand to get her attention, she quickly walked over. "Is it true? Someone killed Santa?" Hillary's voice was laced with disbelief. I was running late, and as I got here, I heard something, but I wasn't sure what it was. I nodded and gestured toward the woman dressed as an elf who was talking to Ben. That's what she said. She's the one who ran out, yelling that Santa was dead. Hillary looked at me. I don't even know who Santa is this year, do you? Do you normally know who Santa is? I asked. Well, for the last 30 years, it was the same person. His name was Boyd Sweet. He retired after last year, though, and there was a lot of fuss about finding the right replacement. Someone was Santa for 30 years, I asked, surprised. That's a long time to volunteer for something like this. It really is. Hillary shook her head. That kind of commitment is rare these days. Boyd was such a great guy. Her tone grew wistful. He's in his 80s now. Last year was his final Christmas as Santa. He told us over dinner that it was just time to pass the role to someone else, but honestly, once Christmas passed, I kind of forgot about it until now. This is just awful, she sighed heavily. He worked so hard every year, always putting an extra effort to make the holiday Jubilee something special. And now this happens. It's unthinkable. Hillary lowered her head into her hands, clearly overwhelmed. I hesitated for a moment before saying, I wonder if we could figure out who Santa was this year, so the authorities can notify the next of kin. Hillary lifted her head and gave me a sharp look. Curiosity gleamed in her eye. I suppose I could find out that information, but shouldn't you leave that to the police? Well, I just want to be helpful. Missy, who had been standing nearby, suddenly interrupted. Excuse me. I'll be right back. She walked off purposefully to handle whatever she needed to do. I turned back to Hillary. Yeah, I know it's the police's job, and it's probably something Ben wouldn't want me meddling in, but I feel like I should do something. I'm sure Ben would tell you to leave it to the professionals, Hillary replied, but Sweet Haven takes our holiday Jubilee very seriously, and that means taking Santa seriously too, so you have my support. Whatever you need to help the police. She used air quotes around the word help. I glanced back toward Ben, who was deep in conversation with the deputies. His face was grim, and I couldn't help but wonder, who would try to ruin Christmas? Chapter 3. The next day, I was in the bakery after the morning rush. Missy had come in earlier and was in the back, whipping up a batch of one of our main staples, peanut butter dog treats. She was a talented baker. And while I enjoyed coming up with our special flavor of the week, I had handed over some of the responsibility of our staple recipes to her. Missy loved what she did, and it gave her something different to focus on. It also freed me up to spend more time with our customers. As we moved into the quieter part of the year, I realized how much I had missed that interaction. I had been spending so much time baking, I hadn't had many opportunities to engage with people. This new arrangement gave both of us some variety, which I really appreciated. Business hadn't slowed down nearly as much this year after the busy season as it had the last, and I was incredibly grateful. In fact, I had even started shipping some of our baked goods. It wasn't something I had originally planned to do, but a few customers had asked if I could send dog treats to their out-of-town friends and family, or they wanted to ship treats home so they didn't have to cart them back. I thought, why not? It had been happening more and more often. And Missy and I had even started discussing the possibility of setting up an online store. It wasn't a fully fleshed out idea yet, but it was something we both agreed might be worth exploring in the future. While I liked the idea, it made me a little nervous. I didn't know anything about setting up a website, and I worried what would happen if it really took off. What if we couldn't handle the volume? However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was probably a good idea. If I truly wanted to grow the business, I might hit a limit with just in-person sales. So I considered the possibility of pausing online ordering during our busiest months, when most people would be back in Sweet Haven, then offering it during the winter for our loyal customers. That seemed like a reasonable compromise. The door opened, and the chime I had hung on it jingled softly, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked up and smiled. It was Ben. He looked as handsome as ever, with his bright green eyes and close-cropped hair. I hadn't spoken to him since I called him yesterday, though I had been tempted to at least send him a text. Chatting on the phone or texting with Ben had become a daily habit. one I had grown extremely fond of. I had missed him last night when there was no communication, but I completely understood why. "I'm so glad you stopped by," I said with a grin, though I was a little puzzled when he didn't smile back. "Is something wrong? Is Missy here?" Ben's tone shifted into that no-nonsense official mode he used when he was working. A flutter of nerves coursed through me. "What's this about?" I asked cautiously. "Is she here?" he repeated. His expression remained unreadable. "Ben, you're making me nervous. Is Missy in some kind of trouble?" "I hope that's not the case. But I do need to talk to her." I nodded slowly. The tension grew. "Okay, I'll go get her from the back." I turned and walked into the kitchen area. Where Missy was finishing up a batch of treats, she looked up when I came through the door. "I'm almost done," she said. "Is it busy? Do you need me to come out there?" "No, it's not that kind of busy," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "Ben's out front, and he asked me to come get you. It's not a social call." "What?" She looked confused. "Exactly what I said. I asked him what it was about, but he wouldn't tell me. Is there any reason he might need to talk to you?" Missy wiped her hands on a dish towel, then took off her apron and hung it on the hook. "I can't think of a single reason he'd need to talk to me. I haven't done anything, at least not that I know of." "I'm sure you haven't," I reassured her, forcing a smile. "You know Ben. He's always so darn serious, it's probably nothing." But even as I said it, I couldn't quite convince myself while Ben could be overly serious at times, he wasn't known for overreacting. If he needed to talk to Missy, it had to be for a serious reason. I just couldn't imagine what it might be, and it didn't seem like Missy had any clue either. Still, I wasn't about to share my concerns with her. Missy already looked nervous enough. We both walked out to the front of the bakery. I was relieved there weren't any customers around. Who knew what kind of gossip the situation could start? "Tillie said you wanted to see me?" Missy said, addressing Ben. "I need you to come with me." His tone left no room for debate. Missy glanced over at me, hesitation in her eyes. "I can shut down the bakery and come with you if you'd like," I offered. "No, that's fine," Missy said. "I'm sorry to leave you like this." Ben looked at me briefly before turning back to Missy. "No worries, you go with Ben and call me when you're done." I tried to maintain a cheerful tone, as if everything was fine, even though my gut told me otherwise. Something about this felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Missy gave me a small nod before walking out the front door and climbing into the passenger side of Ben's department-issued SUV. I figured that was a good sign. At least he wasn't putting her in the back of the car. Once they drove off, I pulled my phone from my back pocket and quickly dialed Hillary. When she answered, I skipped the usual pleasantries. "Ben just came in and made Missy go with him," I whispered, even though the shop was still empty. What did he want with Missy?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I have no idea. He wouldn't tell me, and she didn't seem to have any clue either. I can't even imagine what it could be. I offered to go with her, but she said she was fine." "Well, when you hear anything, or if you need anything, let me know." "I will. Have you heard anything more about Santa?" "Not yet," Hillary replied, "but I did call Jerry Whitaker, the head of the Jubilee Committee. I'm waiting to hear back from him, and I'll let you know if I find out anything about who Santa was." "Thanks, Hillary. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything about Missy." We hung up, and I stared at the clock, willing time to move faster. I just hoped Missy was okay. Chapter 4. I opened the bakery, finding it hard to concentrate on what I was supposed to be doing, even though I was worried about Missy. I hadn't spoken to her since she left with Ben the day before, and I hadn't wanted to bother him either. Perhaps Missy would call me if she needed anything, and Ben most likely had his hands full with the murder investigation. While there wasn't any concrete proof what had happened to Santa was a murder, I had to assume Ben coming here to talk to Missy and not hearing back from either one of them meant it was, by the way Mr. Cuddles was pacing rather than lying down behind the cash register, he knew something was amiss. He was definitely picking up on my nervousness. "Mr. Cuddles, I appreciate your nervousness and solidarity, but really you can go lay down," I said to him. It didn't seem to have any impact. He was such a character. If someone would have asked me a couple of years ago if I would ever have a cane corso, a Saint Bernard, and a Vietnamese pot-bellied pig as pets, I would have said they were crazy. I had always been a pet lover. But my now ex-husband, not so much, Daisy, my Saint Bernard, and Beans, my pig, had become new members of the family. Pretty soon after my divorce and my move to Sweet Haven, I couldn't imagine life without them, and then, a few months ago, Mr. Cuddles joined the family after his owner's unfortunate passing. None of the owner's family was willing to take him, which I found unbelievable because Mr. Cuddles was not only well-trained but truly a cuddlebug. He might have had a menacing look, which belied his name. But he was a sweetheart and constantly wanted to be touching me anytime I sat down on the couch. He was right there, trying to get as close as possible. Of course, that didn't always sit well with Daisy and Beans. They could be quite jealous, so sometimes I had all three of them trying to climb into my lap. Our house could be a little chaotic, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. "Go lay down, Mr. Cuddles. Your pacing is making me nervous," I said to him. He seemed to understand. Mr. Cuddles settled himself next to Daisy and Beans. I went to the back and loaded up a rolling cart. We used to bring trays of baked goods to the front. These included our staples like peanut butter bones and a blueberry-flavored one, which we made 3 times a week to keep a fresh supply. We rotated flavors weekly, with one limited edition special each week once we sold out. It was gone. It had proven to be a great idea, especially once Missy took over social media. She was adept at creating quite a buzz, and now we had people asking in advance what our limited edition treat would be. I couldn't always answer them because I didn't always know. Coming up with new and unique things gave me a lot of pleasure. It wasn't always easy, and it didn't escape me that I was really designing these fancy treats for the pet parents more than the actual pets, but I worked hard to create something pet parents would love the look of and the pets would actually enjoy eating. Once I finished setting up the display case, I wheeled the cart back to the kitchen and prepared to open the doors. The day brought a steady stream of customers, mostly locals. A few times I overheard them talking about what had happened to Santa last Saturday, but no one seemed to have any new information. It was mostly conversation about how horrible the situation was. I had just finished ringing someone up when the door chimed. Missy walked in. I rushed around the counter and gave her a hug. "Are you okay?" I asked after I released her. She nodded slowly, but I didn't necessarily believe it. Missy appeared haggard, like she hadn't slept a wink. "I was so worried when I didn't hear from you after you left here with Ben." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you worry," she said. "No reason to be sorry, as long as you're okay. Can I ask what Ben needed to talk to you about?" "Of course you can. Even if I didn't want to tell you, the news is going to get out eventually." "Come on, let's go in the back. You can at least take your coat off, and we can talk. I'll prop the door open so I can see if anyone comes in, and then I can go out there." She walked with me to the production area, where Missy hung up her coat and stood with me in the doorway. "I don't even know how to say this," she began. "I find it's often best to just come out and be direct." "You're probably right. Santa was murdered by poison, I think. Because the sheriff mentioned poison. Santa was my ex-husband, Edward Schultz." I was dumbfounded, not sure I had heard her correctly. We had shared divorce stories a time or two, but her ex-husband had not lived close by. "I had no idea Edward was in Sweet Haven," I said. "That makes 2 of us. I didn't know he was here, much less playing Santa." "Is that why Ben wanted to talk to you?" "Yep," she said with a grimace. "I'm pretty sure you're looking at the sheriff's #1 suspect." "No way, surely Ben doesn't think you could have anything to do with the murder." "That's certainly not how I felt when I left him." "You know how Ben is," I reassured her, dry, non-emotional, and focused when he's got a case. "But I can't imagine, deep down, that he thinks you have anything to do with it." "I'm glad you believe in me. Did you talk to Ben yesterday?" "No, I figured he had his hands full with what happened and didn't want to bother him, but I can promise you that I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and honestly, it hasn't been that busy today, and we're caught up on baking, so why don't you go home?" "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. If you need more time off, take what you need. I can hold down the fort here." "I hate doing that to you." "Listen, You need to sleep and decompress. Plus, I have Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles to help me, I smiled, hoping she wouldn't feel obligated to stay. It wasn't busy. Not like in the summer when it got so hectic that, as my grandfather used to say in a phrase that wasn't exactly politically correct these days, we were busier than a one-armed paper hanger. Go on, walk down to Hillary's, get your peppermint mocha latte and a pastry, and then go home and relax. Thank you, Tillie. I really appreciate it. I waited until she got her coat back on and had left before I dialed Ben. It went to voicemail after a few rings, but I didn't bother leaving a message. He would see it was me and would know why I was calling. I just had to wait for him to call me back. Chapter 5. I put the lock on the door and switched the sign hanging on it from open to closed while it hadn't seemed very busy. The decently consistent foot traffic hadn't left me with much time to mull over what Missy had told me or the fact Ben had yet to call me back. Hillary had texted me earlier and said to come by the coffee shop after I left the bakery. Once I finished the closing duties, that's where I was headed. I quickly swept, counted down the cash drawer, grabbed my coat, and put leashes on Beans, Mr. Cuddles, and Daisy. They were well behaved, and honestly, I wouldn't have worried about them being off leash. But Sweet Haven did have a leash law. Besides, we only had to go a little way down the sidewalk to the beanery. Snow began to lightly fall, even though Sweet Haven was known for its summer tourism. Whoever was in charge of decorating the downtown area for the winter holidays had done an amazing job. It honestly felt like I was in a scene from a Hallmark movie. Poinsettias hung from streetlights, which were also wrapped in white holiday lights. Several smaller Christmas trees had been scattered throughout the downtown area, and holiday music was being piped in. Any minute now, Santa was going to appear, which brought me back to thinking about Missy. I reached the coffee shop, opened the door, and walked in. Hillary waved to me from behind the counter. She shook her head to the right toward our normal table. Georgina was sitting there. I walked over, and Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles knew what to do. We always situated ourselves in a back corner at a round table, meant for 8, which had enough space underneath for the dogs and Beans to lie down out of the way. That's exactly where they headed after they greeted Georgina and got the pets they seemed to feel entitled to from everyone they met. Once the dogs were settled, Hillary appeared from behind me. She set down a latte and a plate of peppermint bark, which she knew was my favorite. Can I assume that's a gingerbread latte? It sure is. You ladies go ahead and catch up. I'm just waiting for Tiffany to finish taking out the trash. Then I'll make myself a latte and join you. Hillary walked away. I took a sip of the latte and sighed. Georgina laughed. I'm with you. People can have their pumpkin spice, but my favorite is gingerbread. I'm not so sure I'd go so far as to say it's better than pumpkin. I am partial to pumpkin, but I will tell you the gingerbread is definitely a close second. And this peppermint bark, I swear, every batch Hillary makes tastes even better than the last. I agree. Georgina broke off a piece and popped it into her mouth. We sat there quietly for a few moments, too busy enjoying our treats to talk, until Hillary slid into a chair next to us with her own latte. I feel like every resident of Sweet Haven has been in here today, Hillary said. It's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't expect it for a Tuesday. It was like that at the shop, too, Georgina replied. I've had to place an emergency order for more poinsettias and cinnamon-scented pine cones. People are going crazy over those. I've already sold more than I did last year, and we're just getting into December. Georgina owned the flower shop in town. It was one thing that had drawn us together. Hillary, Georgina, me, and our other friend Chelsea. We were all business owners. The bakery has also been busier this year than last December, hopefully. It's a trend that continues, I said. So you know how they shut down the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee because of what happened? Hillary asked. Both Georgina and I nodded. I talked to Sharon, who is the head of the Holiday Jubilee Committee, and they're planning on opening back up on Saturday. They're going to have a complete do-over with the opening festivities and everything. That's good, I said. I mean, it's horrible what happened, but this is really Sweet Haven's most important event of the year, so I'm glad it didn't have to be canceled or anything crazy like that. I agree. Sharon said she and the committee only have a tentative yes from the sheriff, but she said they're going ahead with plans and are hopeful they'll be able to open. Have you talked to Ben? Hillary asked. No, I haven't. which isn't necessarily that odd given what just happened, but I can tell you something that is a little strange. Ben came down to the bakery yesterday and took Missy in for questioning, they both gasped. Why on earth would he bring Missy in for questioning? Hillary asked. Apparently, the victim was Missy's ex-husband, so now she's the prime suspect. According to her, I can't even see how that would be true. The two of them looked at me, dumbfounded, which was pretty much how I felt. How is Missy doing? Georgina asked. She says she's okay, but I'm not sure I believe her. When she came in today, she looked horrible, like she hadn't slept all week, so I sent her home. I know she seemed really worried that she'd be their fallback suspect, and I guess she does kind of have a point. You're going to ask Ben about it, right? I called him and am waiting for him to call me back. We moved on to lighter topics. Though Santa's murder wasn't far from our minds entirely, I finally headed home around 7 and had just sat down with Daisy when my phone rang. It was Ben. Hungry as I wasn't about to miss his call just so I could eat my sandwich. Hello? Hey, Tillie. Sorry I didn't call you last night or get a chance to return your call until now, he sounded tired. That's fine. I know you've had a lot going on. Isn't that an understatement? I'll tell you, I would put the women on the Holiday Jubilee Committee up against hardened criminals any day, Ben chuckled on the other end of the line. I think they're just very used to getting their way. I heard they're pushing for you to let them open on Saturday. Is that going to happen? I think it will. I know how important the event is for the town, so I'm doing my best. It's more than important. From what I've heard, it's the most attended event of the season, I said. It definitely is. It brings a lot of much-needed winter revenue to the town. So I'm just going to jump in and ask this. You can't seriously believe Missy had anything to do with killing Santa Claus? There was a pause on his end. What? I finally said impatiently, Santa's real name was Ed Saxton, and you know I can't talk about suspects or an ongoing investigation. Come on, you can't think Missy had anything to do with this. Even if Santa, Ed Saxton, was her ex-husband. I hope you're not going to stop there with your investigation, I said. Of course not. You know me better than that. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. We talked for a few more minutes before he said goodnight. Even though I had tried a couple of times to ask more questions, he wasn't forthcoming. After we hung up, I picked up my sandwich and took a bite, but my mind was elsewhere. I had to find out who else might have wanted Ed Saxton dead. Chapter 6. Saturday morning, we were once again closing the bakery early and heading down to the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee. I'm so glad that the Holiday Jubilee Committee was able to get clearance to reopen, Missy said. Me too. I know how important it is to the town. Ben had mentioned the committee had put a lot of pressure on him to make sure they were able to reopen. I think the holidays mean a lot to people, Missy said. I don't have the same big family I had growing up, but I still have all of those special memories. I would agree. I have such amazing memories from when my kids were little. It seems like just yesterday, when they would beg to open one present early on Christmas Eve, their dad and I would wait until we were sure they were asleep. Which, of course, they tried to fight, so we could put out Santa's presents. They would wake us up at the crack of dawn. It made for a long day for us, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Heck, I remember when I was a kid, and did that. Those are fond memories, especially circling toys that I wanted from the JCPenney or Sears catalog. I laughed. Me too. I loved getting the Christmas edition of those catalogs. I know, it's just so easy now to go on Amazon and click a button, but there was something about the catalogs that just added to the whole process, don't you think? Missy said, I agree with you there. The process and anticipation were sometimes just as fun as the actual presents. Slow down now. I'm not sure I agree with that, Missy replied, and we both laughed. The two of us chatted the rest of the way to the Holiday Jubilee. When we walked in, I was happy to see it look just as busy as it had the last weekend. I was hoping the tragedy wouldn't keep anyone from attending. Should we do the hot chocolate thing again? Missy asked. Absolutely. This time, I want to try the spicy white chocolate. I'll probably have to get one every time I come so I can try each flavor. A few moments later, we had our hot chocolates in hand. Oh, wow, spicy hot chocolate is amazing, I said. It sure sounded strange to add a little chili powder to hot chocolate, but it doesn't taste weird. I will have to try that one next time. I got the raspberry white chocolate, and I can also say that it's absolutely delicious. We meandered over to the area in front, and I had a sense of déjà vu. It did make me wonder about something, though. Not that I thought for a minute Missy was guilty. I also hadn't wanted to ask too many questions until she seemed ready, because I didn't want her to think I believed she might have had something to do with it. In the last few days, she had been so upset. It didn't feel right adding to it. But today, she seemed in great spirits. I have a question, I said. Missy looked over at me. Of course, you want to ask about when we were here last time and where I went? Ben asked me the same, and I'm sure he asked you too, so don't feel bad about wanting to know. I probably looked confused, and I felt bad. Perhaps I should have waited and not ruined our moment, really. It was none of my business. It's fine. I did go to the bathroom, but there was quite a long line. I had to wait for one to open, but I knew I had time still because I hadn't heard them announce anything. When I came out, I stopped at a couple of the vendor booths on the way back somehow. I missed them doing the announcement, and then, next thing I knew, she paused, sounding distressed. The next thing I knew, someone was saying something happened. That's when I hurried to find you. It all sounded so plausible. She was genuinely upset to hear it had been her ex-husband who had been killed. I had to help her. Around us, the crowd began getting excited. I turned toward the stage. We'll figure out who did this, I murmured, patting Missy's arm just as someone stepped up to the mic. Let's give Santa Claus a big round of applause. I couldn't help but hold my breath just a little, knowing what had happened last time. Did other people feel that way? But there was no reason to be worried a couple of seconds later. The jolly old man in a red and white suit came out, much to the delight of the kids in the audience. There were squeals of laughter and kids screaming, "It's Santa, Santa!" Santa walked back and forth across the stage, waving to the crowd. "Everyone, I know you're excited and anxious to meet Santa," he said. "Make your way over to the side." He then stepped off the stage. 3 elves surrounded him, one of whom was leading an actual reindeer, which was cool. Kids begged their parents to follow Santa. He got farther away from me, and the line of families behind him grew bigger. "It's so sweet seeing all those kids so excited for Santa," Missy said. "I know. I hope no little kid was traumatized by what happened. Hopefully, the rest of the Jubilee will go off without a hitch," I said. "Should we get back?" "Sure. Maybe we'll get some foot traffic." We turned back toward the bakery. As we walked, Missy asked, "Do you think that it's bad that I'm more concerned about facts, like I'm going to be the #1 suspect in my ex-husband's murder, than about Ed?" "No, I don't think so. After all, he was your ex." "I know, but he was also a human being. It's not like you're happy he's dead, to be honest. If you didn't feel that way, you might be a sociopath. I'm curious, though, what happened, to end things between you, and if you don't want to talk about it, you absolutely don't have to." "Oh, I don't mind. I guess I never talk about him, aside from the occasional story, because, honestly, I don't think about him. I suppose we got married too young. Neither of us really seemed to care, or take the time to work on things to make them any better, honestly. We both took each other for granted, and he found company elsewhere." "Oh, Missy, I'm sorry. I wouldn't wish that on anyone." "It's fine. I know this is going to sound horrible, but it gave me the excuse to do something I had been afraid to do, and honestly, he felt the same way. He never admitted it, but I'm pretty sure he purposely wanted to get caught. We were just trapped, and neither one of us had the courage to leave." "If that's the case, what motive would you possibly have to kill him?" I asked. "None," which is what I told the cops. "Well, the positive is you haven't been arrested, so maybe they realize you didn't have anything to do with it." Missy didn't seem to have any ill will toward her ex-husband, but who did, since someone clearly had wanted him dead. Chapter 7. I opened the bakery on Monday morning and was on my phone behind the counter researching ideas for Christmas-themed dog treats when someone walked in. When the bell chimed, I looked up. The older gentleman had no hair on the top of his head but a full white beard. He was dressed in a red and green checked flannel coat and a candy cane striped scarf. I hadn't seen him in here before. Perhaps he was from out of town. Good morning and welcome to Paw Paw's Pet Bakery. My name's Tillie. How can I help you? I asked, walking out from behind the counter. Ho, ho, ho. Hello to you, young lady. I couldn't help but smile at his jolly tone, which was followed by the click of nails on the floor. His booming voice had gotten the attention of Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles. All three came from behind the counter. They're all friendly, I promise, I said quickly, knowing their size could sometimes be imposing. They're just babies, may I pet them? Of course. Just be warned that they are all attention seekers, and once you start petting them, they won't want you to stop. Just like my Tippy, he's getting on in years, but he loves his pets. What are their names? The gentleman made a kissing sound to call them over. That's Beans, I said when Beans reached him first. He would be the neediest of them all. Daisy is the Saint Bernard, and the fierce-looking cane corso is Mr. Cuddles. Mr. Cuddles? He raised a bushy eyebrow. I didn't name him, but trust me, the name suits him. What brings you in today? The gentleman didn't answer right away, too busy giving his attention to the animals, but after a minute or two he stood up. I'm here to see you. Me? Do I know you? Not yet. My name is Boyd Sweet. You're Santa? Yes, I am, he chuckled. I saw you Saturday at the Jubilee. You do make a great Santa. I love it and didn't mind at all coming out of retirement, though. I wish it wasn't under these circumstances. Yeah, it's horrible what happened to the other Santa, I said. Have you heard anything about what happened? No, but I can tell you people are pretty shaken up over it. You mean like the other people working at the Jubilee? Yeah, we haven't had anything like this happen before. The people are a little rattled. Rightfully so. Not an easy thing to go through, I said. No, it's not. At my age, I've seen my fair share of death, but never anything like this. I've never known someone to be murdered. You actually knew that other Santa? Well, I only met him once. It was brief. Over the Santa Bible. I just gave him a few tips of the trade. The Santa Bible? I asked. Boyd must have noticed my confusion because he started chuckling. I know it must seem odd to you that a grown man would put so much stock in something like being Santa. Not at all. In fact, I think the world would be a better place if more people embraced their inner child and didn't lose faith in the things they loved as a kid. I was talking to my friend Missy when we went to the second opening of the festivities, and we both have such fond memories of being kids at Christmas. And I kind of realized that after my kids were grown and didn't believe in Santa Claus anymore, I lost a little bit of that magic. I quit decorating as much, stopped going over the top with baking, and I don't really know why. I think we just get busy and don't always take time to stop and smell the roses, so to speak. That's why I became Santa. One of the reasons. Anyway, I grew up poor. We never really had much in the way of presents or anything, but my parents never failed to make sure my brothers, sisters, and I had a great time anyway. But much like you, when I got older and after my own kids grew up, the magic of Christmas went by the wayside. I'm ashamed to admit now that I started to think of it as more of a chore. After my wife passed away, I just couldn't find any joy in it. What brought back your joy? I asked. I had a heart attack. I'm so sorry to hear that. That was 30 years ago, and I've been right as rain ever since. But there's nothing like a near-death experience to make you wake up and think about your priorities. One of the things I thought about was how much I loved the holidays and why I had allowed them to become more of a chore. That's when I promised myself I would reclaim the joy I once had for Christmas the following year. They founded the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee, and I became the first Santa. I've been Santa ever since. His moving story brought tears to my eyes, and I reached up with my finger to wipe one away. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you cry. Oh no, it's fine. I waved away his concern. Thank you for sharing your story. Did you come in for your dog? No, although my main purpose wasn't to leave here empty-handed, would you pick out something that's your best seller? Sure. I walked over to the display case and grabbed a bag of treats. What brought you in? If it wasn't to get treats for your dog, you said his name was Tippy, right? Yes, that's his name. I actually came in here to talk to you. Me? Why would you want to talk to me? I heard through the grapevine that you have a knack for getting to the bottom of things. Things like what happened to Ed. Now my curiosity was certainly piqued. I guess I've been lucky a few times. I've heard it's more than luck, but in any case, I want to get to the bottom of whoever did this and is trying to ruin Christmas. So, I thought, between your experience and me having the inside track, we could figure this out together. Oh, I don't know about that, I said, even though I had already been trying to figure out who might have done it, especially since Missy was a suspect. I started to say something else when Missy came out from the back with a frantic look on her face. What's wrong? I asked. It's Sheriff Donovan. He wants me to come down to the station again. What if he's going to arrest me? I don't think he's going to arrest you. If he was, he'd just come find you. I don't think he'd ask you to come down to the station. While I believed that to be true, being called back to the station was scary. I'll get out of your hair, Boyd offered, but think about what I said. He left, and I turned back to Missy. Did he say you have to come down right now? He said as soon as I can spare the time. See, if he wanted you there immediately, he'd have said so. I guess. But I still have a really bad feeling about this. Do you want me to go with you? I can call Chelsea and see if she can cover the bakery. You'd do that? You're not asking, I'm offering. I reached for my cell phone. After all, I wanted to give Missy my moral support. Plus, maybe then I would find out why Ben was so interested in Missy as a suspect. Chapter 8. Luckily, Chelsea was able to come right away. About half an hour later, Missy and I were headed to the police station. Missy was quiet and her hands were shaking a little bit. I reached over to pat her hand. It's going to be okay. I know this is scary, but Ben is a good sheriff and he's going to find who's really guilty. I know Ben's a good man. I just don't understand why he thinks I'm the suspect. Anyways, I could never hurt anyone, although I'm sure that's what all culprits say when they get caught, she added with a wry smile. See? Glad to see you have your sense of humor intact. I have to laugh at this, or I'm going to cry, and I'm not sure I can deal. I know I'm an adult woman, but is it bad to say I wish my mom was here? Not at all. My mom's been dead for 20 years, and hardly a day goes by where I don't wish I could talk to her about something. We drove the rest of the way in silence. I had hoped to have something more encouraging to say, but I didn't know exactly what those words might be. We pulled into the police station and I parked. After shutting off the engine, I turned to her. I know these are just words, but I am confident that everything is going to work out. I sure hope so. You just have to have faith, Missy nodded, but she didn't look all that convinced. I wasn't so sure I would be either, if I were in her shoes. We walked into the police station. Peggy, the front desk receptionist, frowned when she saw me. The woman didn't like me. Ben had tried to assure me that wasn't the case at all, but I didn't really believe him. Every time I tried to kill her with kindness, she would just brush me off. I had once joked with Ben that maybe she didn't like me because she had a crush on him, something which made him burst out laughing. He had assured me that was absolutely not the case. Still, I wasn't so sure. He was a handsome man, and they worked closely together. I'll tell him you're here, Peggy said in that clipped tone of hers. We had barely sat down to wait. When Ben walked up to the front, he didn't seem surprised to see me, so I assumed Peggy had told him I had accompanied Missy. Ben had such a good poker face. I couldn't tell if he was annoyed or not. Missy, Ben said with a nod of his head and a small smile, making my heart skip a beat. Come on back with me. Missy got up and looked at me, then to Ben. Do you want her to come with me? She asked nervously. Ben hesitated for a moment. I think you might want some privacy for this, but she can come if you want her to, he said gently. Missy nodded reluctantly. Okay, she said softly. Then, glancing back at me, she added, Please come with me. I gave her a reassuring smile, and we followed Ben to the back. A mix of unease and curiosity settled in my stomach. If it was going to be just a casual conversation, I figured it would have taken place in his office. I took a seat and declined Peggy's offer of a drink. Missy seemed really anxious to get this over with, not that I could blame her. "I'm sure you're curious as to why I called you in here," Ben said. Missy nodded. "When we last spoke, you said your divorce with Ed was amicable." He paused. Missy shifted a little. Uncomfortable with that statement. Ben noticed too. "You did say that, didn't you, Missy?" he asked. "Yeah. But that wasn't really the case, was it?" "No, it wasn't," she admitted. Missy hung her head. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "I was afraid it would make me look guilty, but I guess it probably makes me look even more guilty now." How difficult everything must have been for Missy. What had really gone on between her and Ed, and why hadn't she been upfront about it? "I want you to tell me exactly how things were between you and your ex," Ben pressed. "Things were good until they weren't. I found out that he had invested all of our money, including a second mortgage on our home, which was the family home, into what turned out to be essentially a Ponzi scheme. He lost all of our money and we lost the house I had grown up in, the one my parents had given us." "That had to have really upset you," Ben said. "Of course, but if you think I killed him over it, I wouldn't have done it then, and certainly not waited 3 years later." "I don't know," Ben said evenly. "Maybe you waited until you found out he was in town and decided it was your chance for revenge." "No, I had no idea he was back in town," Missy vehemently shook her head. "I made my peace with what happened a long time ago. That's why I moved back to Sweet Haven. I wanted to start over, and I've been able to do that, thanks to Tillie here. I've got a good job. I've been able to save some money, and I've moved on." "I don't know. Things like losing your childhood home can be pretty traumatic," Ben replied. "It was. But at some point, you have to move on. Like I said, I had no idea Ed was in town." "Are you sure about that?" Ben's tone was probing. Missy looked him dead in the eye. "I'm sure. I had no idea." She might not have been honest about the status of her divorce, but I would have bet money she was telling the truth now. "Is there anything else you haven't told me? Now would be the time to speak up." "No, you know everything. I swear I had nothing to do with Ed's murder." "Well, that's all for now. What I said last time stands. I want to reiterate that you are not to leave town without telling me. And if you think of anything else that could shed any light on what happened, please let me know." "I will." Ben walked us to the front. Missy, while she held it together well in the police station, started sobbing as soon as we got to the door to go outside. She probably thought she was his number one suspect, and after finding out she had lied to him, I had a feeling she was probably right. Chapter 9. "I'm just going to take you home, okay?" I said to Missy while we pulled out of the parking lot. "No, that's okay. I should get back to work." "Absolutely not. I'm not going to let you go back to work. I don't think you should drive or even be alone right now." "Are you sure? I don't want to leave you hanging." "I'm completely sure. Chelsea said she was free all day, so I'll drop you off at home, check in with her, and then how about I come back to your place and bring dinner?" "You don't have to do that." Missy's tears subsided a little. "Oh, I know, but I want to. I'm here for you, and so are the other ladies. Even though you know I lied." "There's enough time to talk about that later." I did want to know, but Missy was struggling right now. She already realized how bad it made her look to Ben. I didn't want to pile on more. She needed to calm down. "I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you," she said. "That's what friends are for." I dropped her off and headed back to the bakery, just as I expected. Chelsea had everything handled. "How did it go?" she asked. "Not great. I dropped Missy off at home. I didn't think she should be driving, and I definitely didn't think she should be working." "Oh no, what happened?" "Let's just say she wasn't entirely truthful with Ben the first time they spoke." "That's not good," she said. "It's not." "Did you say anything to her?" "Not much yet. She was way too upset, and I didn't want to pour salt into the wound, but I told her we'd all come back and bring dinner. Are you free tonight?" "Yep, I'll text Georgina." If you want to text Hillary. If you want to leave now, you can take Mr. Cuddles, Daisy, and Beans home and then pick up dinner. I can close this place down." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. It hasn't been busy. The few customers we've had today have been so delightful. Pet owners are such great people." "That they are. Have you given any more thought to your doggy daycare business?" Chelsea was supposed to take over the family business when her dad retired, but he had said he was going to retire 3 times now, even going as far as having a retirement party, only to change his mind. Her dad had promised he would go through with it by the end of the year, but Chelsea had decided that if he didn't, she was no longer going to wait around for it to happen. Instead, she planned to open her own business, and she was thinking along the lines of a doggy daycare. "I'm trying not to think about it until I see what happens at the end of the year, but the house I was looking at is still for sale, and I'm serious. If my dad doesn't sign things over to me, then I'm going to make an offer on the farmhouse." "Good for you. Thanks for coming to help and staying. What should we get to eat?" I asked Missy what she might want, and she said anything was fine. I feel like we need some comfort food or something. I was guessing Mexican. That's always my go-to, but you're right. Comfort food sounds good. How about the family-style special from the diner? We had it at my parents' for Sunday dinner last week. Turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry relish, and a pumpkin pie. That sounds delicious. Do you think we can order that on such short notice? I'll make the call and I'll text you to confirm when you can pick it up. I nodded and headed to the back, calling out for Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles to follow me. We made it home, and I fed them dinner, even though it was a little early since I wouldn't be back until late. I didn't want them to starve. I let them out and then headed back into town to pick up dinner. Chelsea had texted me it was ready for pickup. That was just one more reason why I loved our small town, since Chelsea had grown up in Sweet Haven. She knew the owner of the diner. Connections really helped to get things done. I pulled into Missy's driveway 40 minutes later. My stomach growled. I hadn't been hungry until I picked up the food, but the aroma of the turkey dinner with all the fixings had made my mouth start watering. After gathering the bags, I headed up to Missy's door. The sound of a car engine caught my attention, and I glanced over my shoulder. Chelsea was pulling in, with Hillary in the passenger seat. I knocked with my elbow since my hands were full, then turned the knob to walk in. "Missy, it's Tillie." "That smells amazing," Missy said. "It is delicious. I had it last week." Chelsea walked in, followed by Hillary and Georgina. "I can't thank you all enough for coming over here. I really appreciate it." "Of course, that's what friends are for," Hillary said. Missy's eyes filled with tears. "Come on now, let's get some food." I started unpacking the bags. Missy wiped her hands off from chopping vegetables and grabbed a dip from the refrigerator. She placed plates on one end of the small island, along with napkins and silverware. "Since this is family style, we can just grab a plate, go through the line, and mingle in the living room. If that's all right with everyone, I've got iced tea or water," Missy said. The food distracted everyone from the reason we were here, and we all dug in. "You're right, Chelsea. This is fabulous. I can honestly say this is the juiciest turkey I think I've ever had," I said. "Me too," Hillary added. "I told you." We finished eating and set our plates on the coffee table between the couch and the love seat. I leaned back into the sofa cushions with a groan. "I shouldn't have had that last bite of turkey." "Me either, but it was so good," Georgina said. "Come on, guys," Chelsea teased. "You can't be full now. We still have pie to occupy us." "I think I'm going to have to wait a bit before the pie," Missy groaned. "That sounds like a fine idea," Hillary added. "Listen, I really appreciate all of you doing this and coming to support me, so I feel like I owe you an explanation," Missy said. "You don't owe us any kind of explanation," Georgina replied. "Yes, I do. I don't know if Tillie filled you in, but I wasn't entirely truthful the first time I talked to Sheriff Donovan. We know you had your reasons. You don't necessarily have to share them," Chelsea said gently. "That's just it. I didn't really have a reason. Except I knew it would make me look more guilty, and I was scared of that. I just made a mistake. But now it made it worse. How could I have been so stupid?" "You were just panicked in the moment. Any of us could have done the same thing, but we know you didn't kill your ex-husband," I said. Georgina, Hillary, and Chelsea all nodded. "I feel like Sheriff Donovan thinks I'm lying about not knowing Ed was in town, but I swear I didn't know. I can't imagine why he was here. He wasn't from here and didn't know anyone that I knew of. I think we need to have faith that Ben will get to the bottom of this, I said. I do. It's just hard. That's completely understandable, Hillary said. A knock came at the door, and we all jumped. Missy looked terrified, like it might be the sheriff coming to arrest her. You want me to get it? I asked. If you don't mind. Of course not. I got up and headed to the door amidst a wave of tension. If I felt that way, no wonder Missy was a wreck over this. I opened the door, expecting to see the sheriff, but instead, there was a woman standing there. She was probably in her 40s with blonde hair and blue eyes, and was quite attractive. Can I help you? I asked. Is Missy here? She is. But I didn't want to let just anyone in the house to see Missy, considering the circumstances. Can I ask what this is regarding? I'm Laura Spillman, her sister-in-law. Well, her ex-sister-in-law. I stood there, stunned for a minute. Someone walked up behind me. Before I could turn to see who it was, Missy gasped, "Laura, what are you doing here?" There didn't seem to be any animosity on Missy's face. Did Laura know Missy was a suspect in her brother's murder? Perhaps we were about to find out. Chapter 10. I had tried to give Missy the day off, but she said work was the only thing keeping her sane, so I let her go into the bakery and open. It gave me the luxury of being home the next morning, making my homemade soft batch cookies. Last night had been exhausting. Laura and her mom were in town, arranging for Ed's body to be sent to his hometown once the police were ready to release it. Missy shared that the police had spoken to Laura and her mother, asking if anyone might have wanted Ed dead. Laura had been honest with Missy. She didn't think for a second that Missy had anything to do with it. However, her mother had apparently never forgiven Missy for divorcing Ed and had made her opinion abundantly clear to the sheriff. This stressed Missy out. Laura obviously felt bad about it. We had assured Missy Ben wouldn't think her mother-in-law's dislike for her equated to murder, but I wasn't sure if it made her feel any better. Laura had also revealed, to Missy's complete shock, that Ed had moved to town to attempt to win her back. At first, Missy didn't believe her, but Ed had told Laura what he was planning. He had even applied to work at the bank, thinking it would show Missy how he had changed and how much he regretted their past. When Missy asked why he hadn't contacted her after moving to town, Laura disclosed he'd had some big plan to reveal himself. After settling in, Missy had a hard time wrapping her head around that revelation. Eventually, she believed Laura. But she was still in shock from the news. A couple of hours later, long after Laura and her mom had returned home, Hillary, Chelsea, and Georgina had stopped by to check in on Missy. Do you really think that sitting there politely and wagging your tails will get you a treat? I had baked cookies last night when I got home, even though it was late, then rushed to frost them once they had cooled completely. The whole time I was in the kitchen, Daisy and Mr. Cuddles had patiently lain on the floor, not taking their eyes off me for a second. Hoping I might drop something, I didn't want to give them any of the cookies I had made due to the sheer amount of sugar in them, but I did have a special pet-friendly version I had baked just for them. After carefully handing out the treats, I packed up the rest of the cookies. One container was for Ben at the police station, where I hoped to butter him up and maybe get him to share some information with me. I also packed a few for Peggy, thinking it might make her like me better. The final container was for Boyd. Last night, I had told the ladies how Boyd had sought me out at the bakery and offered to help figure out who was behind Ed's murder. Hillary said she would talk to Sharon. We all wanted to know if anyone else had applied to be Santa and what might have led Ed to think that role was a good idea. 1 cookie each. That's all you're getting, I said to Daisy and Mr. Cuddles. They gobbled up their treats and then looked at me expectantly for more. I let them out and told them I would be back soon, feeling guilty as I always did when I didn't take them with me, even though the police station was pet-friendly and I was sure Boyd would love to see them. I didn't want the added distraction. When I walked into the police station, Peggy, as usual, frowned. But this time, I had come prepared. "Are you here to see the sheriff?" she asked. "I am. I thought you might like these." I handed Peggy one of the 2 containers I'd brought with me. Peggy looked at me a little suspiciously. She opened the lid to take a peek, and then she smiled, something I had never seen her do. "You made these for me?" "I made some for you and Ben." Peggy dipped her hand in and pulled out a Christmas tree-shaped cookie frosted in green, carefully decorated with candy buttons as ornaments. She took a bite and closed her eyes. Oh my goodness, these are so delicious. Thank you. It's my mom's recipe, handed down from her mom. I don't suppose you'd be willing to share? The recipe, of course. Give me your email, and I'll send it to you. Peggy's eyes lit up with delight. She reached for the phone to tell Ben I was here. He said to go ahead and head back. Thanks. I walked back to Ben's office. He looked up and motioned for me to have a seat. You look like the cat that caught the canary, he said. I think I finally got Peggy to like me. I leaned forward and set the container of cookies in front of him. Really? See, I told you she didn't have a problem with you. Well, I think I just won her over with cookies. There's another container in there for you. That doesn't surprise me. You could win over even the most hardened criminal with your cookies, so what do I owe the pleasure of you being here? Something tells me you didn't just stop by to give me cookies. No, I did want to see you, but I have an ulterior motive. You know I can't tell you anything about an open investigation. What makes you think that's what I want to talk about? I pretended to be horrified. Ben smiled. Okay, I wanted to ask if there was some other reason besides Missy lying about her amicable divorce that makes you suspect her? Why do you think I'd answer that question? Come on, having a cantankerous, acrimonious divorce makes someone look guilty of murder. If that's the case, I'd better hope my ex-husband never turns up dead. Would you lie about it? I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say no, but I've never been in that situation. Honestly, you can't really think Missy would kill anyone. Right now, I'm keeping all options open. I hear that her ex-mother-in-law isn't necessarily a big fan. You heard that, did you? Yeah, her ex-sister-in-law, Laura, stopped by her house last night when I was there. She did? Yeah. She didn't seem to have any animosity toward Missy, and that has to count for something, doesn't it? I mean, I know a lot of in-laws who aren't too fond of their daughters-in-law, so surely you have to take what she says with a grain of salt. Are you trying to tell me how to do my job? He asked playfully. No, I'm just making some suggestions. I know you care about Missy, and I like her too, but I have to do my job and make sure I don't overlook someone as a suspect just because I like them. I know. On to a different topic. I know I haven't put too much thought into it, but what do you say we go to dinner Friday night? That sounds good. Do you want me to cook or do you want to go out? Why don't we go out, Ben suggested. It's the holidays, and I think it'd be fun to go somewhere all decorated for the season, plus that way you don't have to go to any trouble. Sounds good. I stood up to leave. Don't work too hard. Ben got up, walked around the desk, and gave me a quick hug. Thanks. If you could try to stay out of my investigation, I'd appreciate it. No promises, I said with a grin. I called to Peggy when I left and told her I would send her the recipe later when I got home. While I hadn't learned anything new about the murder, at least I got to see Ben, and I had finally turned a corner with Peggy that made for an okay day in my book. Chapter 11. I called Missy quickly to check on the bakery. She assured me everything was fine and said I didn't need to rush back. I decided to head over to Boyd's house. Hillary had gotten his contact information from Sharon. I figured he might have insights into who could have had it out for Santa. Even though Boyd had retired, Sharon mentioned he had still been mentoring Ed. He might know if anyone had been harassing Ed or if anything suspicious had occurred while they were setting up for the Jubilee. I hoped Boyd wouldn't mind me dropping by unannounced. If he did, I figured the cookies I brought might earn me some forgiveness. I pulled up to his house and admired the picturesque white picket fence surrounding his property. The house itself was a vision, decked out with wreaths, lights, and garlands. I couldn't imagine the time and effort required to decorate so elaborately, especially for an older man. Had he done it all himself? The mailbox caught my eye. It was a miniature replica of his house, complete with tiny wreaths and lights. It was so adorable, and I couldn't help but imagine having one just like it for my own home. When I reached the door, Boyd opened it with a welcoming smile. At least I didn't have to worry about him being upset about my unannounced visit. To what do I owe the pleasure? He stepped aside to let me in. I brought cookies. I held up the container. Made them myself. His eyes lit up. Cookies? For me? You didn't have to do that. I did, though. They're all family recipes. I handed him the container and took off my coat, hanging it on the coat rack by the door. Come on into the kitchen. You'll have one with me, won't you? Boyd asked, already leading the way. Sure, though I probably shouldn't. I ate way too many last night while I was baking them. Life's too short to worry about that, Boyd said with a chuckle. He motioned for me to take a seat at the dining table. A festive candy cane tablecloth covered the table, and the whole kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. Boyd started the coffee pot, pulled 3 different creamers from the fridge, and set them on the counter. You have quite the selection, I said, noting the flavors: peppermint, gingerbread, and pumpkin spice. I never know what mood I'll be in, so I like to be prepared. A few minutes later, Boyd poured the coffee and placed 2 mugs on the table. His was decorated with Santa, mine with Rudolph. He reached for the cookie container, popped the lid off, and rubbed his hands together with glee. They almost look too pretty to eat, he said, eyeing the carefully frosted cookies. Almost. He chose a Santa-shaped cookie, which didn't surprise me, given his role. I had made extra Santas, knowing he would likely favor them. These are delicious, he said after a bite. Possibly the best Christmas cookies I've ever had, and I don't say that lightly. Thank you, Boyd. That means a lot. We ate cookies and sipped coffee in comfortable silence. By the time Boyd finished his, I realized all I had eaten that day were cookies. I would need something more substantial before heading back to the shop. Well, I appreciate the cookies, but something tells me that wasn't your main reason for coming by. Boyd set down his mug. You're right. I heard you'd spent time with Ed before he died, and I wanted to know if he'd mentioned having issues with anyone. Boyd's expression turned thoughtful. I did spend quite a bit of time with him before the Jubilee. He was new to being Santa, and I wanted to make sure he was prepared. It's not as easy as it looks. I can imagine, I said, nodding. He was a quick learner, Boyd continued, but to your question, no, he didn't mention any issues. He was friendly with almost everyone. Almost? I leaned forward slightly. Well, there was one exception, Wyatt Gingerbread. I blinked. Wyatt Gingerbread? Boyd chuckled. Yep, it's a nickname. Wyatt's one of the elves and has been for, at least 15 years. I had found it odd enough that Boyd had played Santa for decades, but being an elf for 15 years, that seemed even stranger. What was the issue between him and Ed? I asked. It wasn't really about Ed. Wyatt was upset he didn't get the Santa position. He felt it should have been his turn. Well, I can understand why he might feel that way after 15 years. Why didn't he get the role? Sharon, the head of the Jubilee, didn't think he was the right fit. Wyatt's great at what he does, but he's particular. Stubborn, even. He's not always open to new ideas. Do you think he could have done something to Ed? I asked cautiously. Boyd frowned. I don't know. I'd like to think not, but he trailed off, shaking his head. I'm surprised he didn't quit. If he was that upset, I said. He's too dedicated to Sweet Haven and the Jubilee for that. It means everything to him. What about the other elf? Any tension there? Amanda? No, she's sweet, very easygoing. I doubt she had any issues with Ed. Do you think Wyatt would be willing to talk to me? I asked. Maybe he knows something. Boyd rubbed his chin. Wyatt's not much for talking, especially to strangers, but if I go with you, he might open up. How about we visit him together tomorrow? Are you sure that's not an imposition? Not at all, especially if you're planning to bake more cookies anytime soon, he said with a wink. Consider it a deal. We made plans to meet the next day. When I left, I couldn't help but think that Wyatt sounded like a strong suspect. If he had felt Ed had taken the position that was rightfully his, getting rid of Ed might have seemed like the solution. Chapter 12. Are you sure you don't mind me leaving you again? I asked Missy. Yes, I'm totally sure. It hasn't been that busy, so I can handle it here. Plus, work keeps my mind off things honestly. I don't know what I'd do without this job right now. Please, I'm the lucky one to have you. I won't be gone long, and if you need me, you know you can always call. I know. Now go. You don't want to keep Boyd waiting, or should I say Santa? I laughed. As much as that man loves Christmas, I don't think he'd mind being called Santa. After grabbing my things, I headed toward the door, closely followed by Beans, Daisy, and Mr. Cuddles. Their hopeful expressions tugged at my heart, and I paused, feeling a pang of guilt for not taking them with me. I turned back to Missy. Hey, do you know if dogs are allowed at the Jubilee? I think so. I'm pretty sure I saw some there on Saturday, but are you sure you want to take all 3 of them? Not really, I admitted, but I feel bad leaving them behind. I'm a sucker for their sad little faces. I totally get it, Missy said with a smile. I went to the back and grabbed their leashes. Come on, guys. They didn't need any more prompting. The dogs knew the leashes meant they were coming along. I loaded them into the back seat of my Jeep, once again wishing I had a bigger vehicle. With 3 large animals squeezed together, there wasn't much room left. The Jubilee site was only a few minutes away. I could have walked, but the cold wind convinced me to drive. When I parked, I turned to the trio. All right, you 3, listen up. You need to behave. This visit isn't about you getting all the attention. It's about me finding some answers. I hoped Wyatt was an animal lover. If he wasn't, well, that would make him more suspicious in my book. I mean, how could you trust someone who didn't like animals? Boyd had told me to meet him at the entrance to the tent by the main stage where everyone got into costume. Wyatt always arrived earlier than the others, so there was a good chance we would catch him alone. When the dogs and I reached the tent, Boyd was already there, smiling as we approached. I hope I didn't keep you waiting, I said. Not at all. I just got here. Boyd's face lit up when he noticed the dogs. And I'm so glad you brought these guys. How are you 3 doing? He crouched while the trio scrambled for his attention. Sorry, they're not exactly polite when it comes to getting attention. Don't worry about it. What good are pets if you can't spoil them, Boyd said, scratching Daisy behind her ears. I felt guilty leaving them behind, and I thought maybe Wyatt might be an animal lover. Figured it could help soften him up. He is. He's great with animals and kids. Adults, not so much, Boyd grinned. I saw him go in a few minutes ago, so he's definitely here. Let's get this over with then, I said, and we entered the tent. I had never seen so much Christmas decor crammed into one space. It was like stepping into a Christmas fairyland. But I couldn't stop myself from feeling a bit paranoid, worrying Daisy or Mr. Cuddles might knock something over. We wound our way to the back, where a door labeled Santa's dressing room stood. Boyd knocked, and a voice called out, "Come in." Inside, a man stood in front of a mirror, adjusting a Santa suit. He looked up when we entered. I recognized him as the elf I had seen speaking to Ben on the night Ed died. "Wyatt, what are you doing?" Boyd asked, eyeing the costume Wyatt was wearing. "Trying on the suit one day, I'll have my shot at being Santa." Wyatt smoothed the fabric over his chest. "I don't doubt you will," Boyd said diplomatically. "Wyatt, this is my friend Tillie Moore. She'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind." "About what?" Wyatt's eyes narrowed. He hadn't acknowledged Daisy, Beans, or Mr. Cuddles, all of whom were visibly excited to meet someone new. "I'm not with the police or anything," I said quickly. "I just wanted to ask about Ed Saxton." "Ed?" Wyatt asked, his tone dismissive. "I barely worked with him." He glanced down at the dogs. "Are they friendly? Especially the pig?" I smiled. "Beans. He's very friendly." Wyatt stepped forward and scratched Beans behind the ears. Immediately earning the jealousy of the other 2, they pushed their way closer, vying for his attention, while Wyatt indulged them. His demeanor softened, and he finally spoke. "No, I have no idea what happened to Ed. One minute, he was getting ready, and the next thing I knew, he'd passed out. Or at least, that's what I thought. I ran out yelling for help." "You didn't notice anyone suspicious lurking around?" I asked. "No, I didn't." "Do you know what he was doing before he passed out?" "Like I said, he was getting ready." Before I could press further, a cheerful voice interrupted from behind us. "I know what he was doing." We turned toward a young woman with short dark hair. One of the other elves, I realized, she was cute and bubbly, and her demeanor screamed optimism. What was he doing? Wyatt snapped. Irritation flashed across his face. This must have been what Boyd meant about Wyatt struggling with adults. The young woman, however, didn't seem fazed. He was eating fruitcake, she said. Someone brought some by, and Ed said he loved fruitcake. He ate 3 pieces. I even joked that if he kept it up, he wouldn't need extra padding for Santa's belly. Do you know who brought the fruitcake? I asked. She shook her head. No idea, do you, Wyatt? Wyatt shook his head as well. I introduced myself and the dogs, and the elf, whose name was Amanda, crouched to pet them. They're so big, she exclaimed. Don't tell them that, I said jokingly. They all think they're lapdogs. Beans, especially. Beans, of course, had taken a liking to Wyatt and stayed glued to his side. After a few more minutes of casual conversation, Boyd reminded Wyatt it was time to get ready, which likely meant Boyd needed his Santa suit back. As I led Daisy, Mr. Cuddles, and Beans to the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Hillary. Come by the coffee shop as soon as you can. I wonder what this is about, I murmured, sending a quick reply that I would be there in 10 minutes. Chapter 13. Everyone was already waiting for me at the coffee shop. Georgina, Hillary, Chelsea, and Missy were seated around a table with coffee and treats in front of them. Hillary waved and pointed to an empty seat. A steaming coffee cup waited for me. Mr. Cuddles. Chelsea called out. The dogs and Beans eagerly made their way to her side of the table. I handed her their leashes, knowing they would soon settle under the table, keeping an eye out for any food that might accidentally fall their way. A common occurrence, and usually not by accident, my friends. Really, most people in town spoiled the animals like crazy, though I couldn't blame them. The 3 of them were too cute not to pamper. I took off my coat, draped it over the back of my chair, and sat down, reaching for my latte. I got you a gingerbread latte. I hope that's okay. Hillary said, That sounds delicious. It's my favorite right now, I replied, taking a sip. The warm, spicy sweetness was perfect. I've been dying to tell you this. Hillary leaned in conspiratorially and looked around the table. What is it? Curiosity lit up Georgina's face. I had coffee with Sharon today, Hillary said. Sharon from the Jubilee Committee? Hillary nodded. Yes, she told me that. In the month leading up to the Jubilee, she started receiving threatening letters telling her to cancel the festival. Hillary paused and glanced around before continuing. She thinks the murder of Santa, of Ed, was connected. Like maybe someone killed him to send a message. The table fell silent for a moment before Georgina spoke. That's terrible. Does she really think the murder was because she didn't cancel the Jubilee? She's sure of it. Sharon's beside herself. She keeps saying it's her fault, that Ed would still be alive if she'd reported the threats to the police. That's not her fault, I said firmly. The blame lies with whoever killed Ed, not Sharon. That's exactly what I told her, Hillary replied, but I don't think it made her feel any better. I just can't think of why anyone would want to shut down the Jubilee. The whole town looks forward to it every year. Did she end up reporting the letters to Ben? I asked. After Ed was killed, she hadn't taken them seriously before because she thought it was just some crackpot. Has she ever received letters like that before? I asked. No, she said this was the first time, and she couldn't imagine why anyone would have a problem with the Christmas festival. She thought it was a sick prank, you know. Someone who just wanted to stir up trouble. Did the letters say what would happen if she didn't cancel the Jubilee? I pressed. Hillary shook her head. Not really. She said they were all vague. The letters said she'd regret it. That's so scary, Chelsea's eyes were wide. I agree, I said, but it makes me wonder. What if Ed wasn't the real target? What if someone wanted to stop the Jubilee itself? You'd have to be a special kind of Grinch to try to shut down a holiday festival, Georgina said with a frown. What could anyone possibly gain by shutting down the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee? I wondered aloud. If those letters were some kind of sick prank and someone really wanted the Jubilee shut down, there has to be a reason why, a motive of some kind, or why risk it? I should have asked Sharon. Hillary's voice was tinged with regret. I was so caught off guard when she told me about the threats that I didn't think to dig deeper. I was just stunned. Do you think she'd be willing to talk to me? I'd like to ask if she has any idea who might have sent the letters. I'm sure she would. She's willing to tell anyone. If it might help figure out who did this, I can go with you if you'd like. That sounds like a good idea, I said. By the way, I also found out that Ed was eating fruitcake right before he keeled over. That man loved his fruitcake, Missy said, wrinkling her nose. I always thought it was the nastiest stuff ever, even the kind his grandma made, and she was an amazing cook. Ed would eat an entire fruitcake in one sitting. I've never met anyone who liked fruitcake as much as he did. How did you find that out? Hillary asked. An elf. Boyd and I spoke to Santa's elves today, Wyatt and Amanda. Amanda said Ed had 3 large slices of fruitcake right before he collapsed. Does anyone know how he actually died? Chelsea asked. The sheriff alluded to poison, but of course he wouldn't say for sure, Missy said. I haven't talked to Ben much since all this happened, but I can ask him, I offered. If he was poisoned, it had to be someone who knew about his love of fruitcake, and if we can figure out who that was... I trailed off, my mind racing with possibilities. Chapter 14. I'm sorry I haven't been around as much the last week or so, Ben said when we were riding in his truck on the way to dinner Friday night. He was right. I hadn't talked to him much, let alone seen him, since the murder of Santa Claus at the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee. I understand. It's not as if you've been ignoring me without a reason. Obviously, all murders are bad, but I can imagine this one, happening during the holidays and involving Santa, has added extra pressure on you. I also know your job never really sleeps. I appreciate your understanding. And yeah, the fact that this happened to Santa has brought a lot more urgency to figuring out who did it. You'd almost think it was the actual Santa who was murdered, Ben said with a chuckle. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time to be with me now. Have you ever eaten at the boat? Ben asked. No. I've heard about it and heard it's good, but I don't go out to dinner much. When I do go out by myself, it's usually to the diner in town, or I grab a snack at the coffee shop. Though I have been to the French bistro a time or two. Even when I go out with the girls, we tend to hang out at one of our houses. I don't get out much either, but I went there once years ago for a friend's birthday party. It stuck in my mind, and I've wanted to go back. So this felt like the perfect excuse to try it. Thank you for being my date tonight, Ben said. It didn't take long to get to Clearwater and the restaurant. It was a good thing Ben had made reservations because the place was quite busy. If this is any indication, it's looking really good, I said when we pulled in and drove around the building several times trying to find a parking spot. I called my friend and asked if I should make a reservation, and he said definitely. But now I can see why. Honestly, I didn't think it would be this busy during the off-season. Shows how little I know about this place. Ben laughed. Same, I agreed. We got out of the truck. He took my hand as we walked up to the restaurant and through the door to the hostess stand. How can I help you? Asked a pretty young lady, who I guessed was probably a college student home for the holidays making some extra money. Reservation for 2, Ben Davenport. The hostess consulted something on an iPad. Got it right here, she said brightly. The young lady grabbed 2 menus and led us into the dining room. Even though the parking lot had been packed, the restaurant itself had a surprisingly spacious dining area. The tables were well placed. We didn't feel like we were sitting on top of the people next to us. It was a refreshing change from some places, where the tables were so close together one wouldn't have enough space to enjoy their meal. Your waitress is Jamie and will be here shortly to get your drink order. No sooner had we thanked the hostess and she walked away than someone else arrived with a basket of fresh bread, butter, and waters. The aroma of the bread hit my senses immediately. Oh my! I took a piece and slathered on a liberal amount of butter. I know a balanced diet is good for you, Ben said, but I'll tell you a secret. I could live on bread and butter alone. My mom always made fresh bread. In fact, it was a treat to have store-bought bread when I went to a friend's house. You always want what you don't have, I guess, but now I'd kill to have fresh homemade bread anytime I wanted it. I'm with you there, I said. I do make it occasionally, but it's not something I do often. And I'm not really sure why. I could definitely make it more. Well, there's only so much time in the day. Your schedule is busy enough as it is. True, but I'm sure I could squeeze in some bread making, though I'm not sure it would be as good as this. This bread is fantastic. It has rosemary in it, Ben said. A man who knows his spices. I didn't realize that was one of your skills. I have quite a few hidden talents. Oh, really? I said, liking how he was being a little flirtatious. Hello there. I'm Jamie. I'll be taking care of you tonight, said a young woman approaching the table. Our specials are salmon fillet with rice and your choice of asparagus or a vegetable medley or beef medallions with garlic mashed potatoes. Can I take your drink order, or would you like a moment to look at the menu? I'll have an iced tea, sweet, and I'm ready to order. How about you, Ben? I'm going to get one of the specials. Me too. I'll take a lemonade and the beef medallions with asparagus. I'll take the salmon, but with Brussels sprouts. Well, that's easy enough. I'll have those drinks right out, and your food should be along shortly, the waitress said before heading off. So, how has the investigation been going? I asked. A lot of dead ends, but no more or less than any other investigation. You know these things take time. I know. Wyatt Gingerbread certainly is quite the character. So is Boyd Sweet, for that matter. Ben let out a little sigh and paused for a second, waiting for the waitress, who had just returned to drop off our drinks, to leave. Once she was gone, Ben started talking again. You know that I'm not going to discuss the case, and I know I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm almost afraid to ask. Why have you been talking to Boyd Sweet and Wyatt Gingerbread? Boyd actually took it upon himself to come into the bakery. He said he heard I was a bit of an amateur sleuth and thought maybe we could team up since he could be my inside man. Ben just looked at me. My news didn't exactly thrill him. One of these days you're going to give me a complex, making me feel like you don't think I know what I'm doing around here, he said. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You know that's not it at all. I can't help that I'm naturally curious. And for the record, he sought me out, not the other way around. I promise I'm not doing anything that will interfere with the investigation, and if I find out anything I think you should know, I'll tell you. I would appreciate that, Ben said. I started to ask him about his Christmas plans, thinking it would be fun to go to the festival together, but his phone, which he had set on the table when we arrived, buzzed. Earlier, he had explained that with an open murder investigation, he needed to stay accessible. Ben picked up his phone and glanced at the screen. His expression darkened. I need to take this, Ben said. Of course. Do what you need to do. He answered the call, got up, and walked away from the table, not wanting to disturb anyone nearby. I sat there, hoping nothing bad had happened. When he rushed back to the table moments later, flagging the waitress over, it became serious. Is something wrong, Ben? I asked. The Christmas tree at the festival is on fire. The fire department is already there. But since this could be related to the murder, I need to get over there. Can I get you something? The waitress asked. Yes, actually. We've had an emergency. Can we get our food boxed up to go, if possible? So sorry to hear that. I'll get those right away, Jamie said. It didn't take long before she returned with our food packed in to-go containers. We left the restaurant, walking quickly to Ben's truck. I hope you don't mind coming with me. I don't want to take the time to take you home first. I know that sounds really horrible, but you know what I mean, Ben said. Oh, it's not horrible at all. I totally understand. We didn't talk on the way back to Sweet Haven. He had a lot on his mind, and I was completely fine sitting there in comfortable silence. When we pulled up, people were gathered at a safe distance from where the firemen had just put out the fire. The poor Christmas tree was now a smoldering mess. I opened my door. Ben looked at me, and I got the feeling he was about to ask me to stay in the vehicle. He must have decided against it because he didn't say anything. We walked toward the fire site. I spotted Boyd, Wyatt, and Amanda standing off to the side. "I'm going to go talk to Santa and his elves," I gestured toward the trio, "and I'll stay out of your way. Just text me when you're ready to leave." "Okay." He nodded and broke into a slow jog toward a man I assumed was the fire chief. The man wasn't wearing full fire gear, just a jacket, and was talking to one of the deputies. "What happened?" I asked when I reached Boyd, Wyatt, and Amanda. "We were on the other side when it happened," Boyd said. "We were at Santa's booth when we first noticed the fire. I heard people screaming and we could see the smoke. Of course, everyone in line took off to see what had happened, and we followed suit. By the time we got there, it wasn't but a couple of minutes until the firemen showed up and we watched them put the fire out." "Do you think it was just an accident? Like faulty bulbs or something?" I asked. "This year they used new LED lights, so that would probably be unlikely," Boyd said. "Maybe it's just a coincidence." But for some reason, I didn't really believe that. It didn't seem like one. And judging from Ben's sense of urgency to get here, I had a feeling his initial thought was the same. Who on earth would want to ruin Christmas? I spent the better part of an hour talking with Boyd and the others. Ben had someone announce over the loudspeaker that if anyone had information about how the fire started, they should contact him. Did he have proof it was arson, or was he just asking as a general precaution? Finally, I received a text from Ben to meet him. I said goodbye to Boyd. Wyatt and Amanda had already left, and headed to meet Ben. He was waiting for me, and he looked tired. "Got everything taken care of? I don't mind waiting longer. You don't have to rush on my account," I said. "No, it's good for now. I can get you home. Sorry to ruin our night." "You don't owe me anything. As a matter of fact, it's got me starving. I could heat up our food when we get to my house if you want." "Sure, if you don't mind." "I don't mind at all. The hard part's already done." "I'd like that. It will at least allow us to spend a little more time together," Ben said. I smiled, happy he felt the same. When we got to the house, I told him to take a seat at the dining table while I got plates out and warmed our food. I set everything down on the table along with 2 glasses of water. "Reheated salmon isn't always the best, but hopefully it still tastes okay," I said. "I don't think I care much about taste right now. I'm that hungry." After Ben and I had eaten a few bites, I set my fork down to take a sip of water. "So, do you think the fire was intentional?" I asked. "Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure it was set on purpose." "Seriously?" "It looks like there was an issue at the electrical box where something was plugged in. I only caught a glimpse because there were a bunch of people around it by the time I got there. The first person who had arrived and called 911 said they were walking by and saw a spark coming from the junction box. All of a sudden, the tree caught on fire. I know those people will be interviewed, even though I told them not to talk about it yet." "You think it's connected to Ed's murder?" I asked. "It's too early to tell." "The letters that Sharon received sure make it seem like it must be related." "You know about those?" "I do. I also know that he ate a fruitcake just before he died, so was he poisoned?" "You know how I feel about talking about a case, but if you promise you won't say a single thing, and realize that if you do, it could jeopardize the investigation, I'll answer you." "I won't say anything, I promise." "After this latest incident, I do think Ed probably wasn't the target. It seems like the festival might be the target because I don't believe much in coincidences." "Do you have any idea who's behind it?" "Not yet. Sharon didn't keep the envelopes or anything, and honestly, I'm surprised she kept the letters. So I don't really have anything to go on." This revelation definitely changed things. If someone was targeting the festival, or Christmas in general, it meant a much wider pool of potential suspects. "So, is Missy less of a suspect now?" I asked. "Right now, I'm still keeping all my options open." "Ben might say that, but Missy would have no reason to threaten Sharon or the festival. My gut told me she had nothing to do with any of this. Maybe Sharon would have more insight when I talked to her tomorrow, or Boyd might have an idea if there really was some Christmas enemy out there. Chapter 15. Good morning, Boyd said when he walked into the bakery. I brought you all coffee. That's a nice thing to do. You didn't have to do that. I took the cup he offered me. I got one for Missy as well. She's in the back right now. She should be up in just a second. She was just grabbing some things to stock the display case up here. Just then, the door to the back opened and Missy walked through with a tray in her hands. It's our lucky day, Missy. Boyd brought us coffee. I took a sip while she sat the tray down and walked over to us. This isn't regular coffee, it's a gingerbread latte, I explained. That's my favorite this time of year. Boyd handed Missy her coffee. Thank you, Boyd. How did you know gingerbread was my favorite? I asked. He got my favorite as well. The white chocolate latte, Missy said. Santa always knows. Boyd had a twinkle in his eye, and we burst out laughing. Okay, fine. I asked Hillary what you two liked. I didn't want to just bring you plain old coffee. That's not very Santa-like. No, it wouldn't be, and we appreciate it, I said. Let me just go get my coat. Where are your sweet little angels? Boyd asked. I'm not so sure they are sweet little angels, but they're in the back, probably sleeping. Come on back with me. I know they would love to see you. We walked into the production area, and the dogs were indeed sleeping on the bed I had for them in the corner. When they heard the door creak, only Mr. Cuddles raised his head, but when he noticed Boyd, he got up and ran over to him. The click of his nails woke the other two. In the minute they saw someone was back there besides me, they both scrambled to their feet and ran over to Boyd. Feel free to push them away at any time, I said, shaking my head and putting my coat on. They were all fighting for his attention, and by the way Boyd was laughing and talking to them, he didn't mind one bit. I finally tore Boyd away from the animals, and we headed out back. Are you sure you don't mind driving? He asked me. Not at all. It's the least I can do since you brought coffee. Sounds good to me. I like being chauffeured around. I'm assuming you know Sharon pretty well from all your years of being Santa, I said while we pulled out of the parking lot. Which way do I need to go? When we made this plan, Boyd had told me he knew where she lived. Yes, she's a wonderful woman. Go out to Main Street and turn right. Sharon has been heading the Holiday Jubilee Committee for the last 20-some-odd years. She also loves Christmas, though I guess you don't get into this business unless you do. Much like me, she has built her entire life around the Christmas season. Poor woman. That this is happening to her with all the effort she's given to put on the Jubilee each year. How far down Main Street should I go? Head to Orchard Drive. It's the road right before the old farmer's stand. Then you will want to turn left. And she lives down that road about half a mile. I asked Boyd about his family, and he asked me about mine. We just made small talk until we pulled into Sharon's driveway. I felt bad that I hadn't brought her cookies and made a mental note that when I baked another batch, and I definitely would be whipping up another, I would bring her some. It wouldn't fix things, but it might make her feel better. Sweet treats always did that for me. We walked up to the door, and not a few seconds later, Sharon opened it. She was a petite woman, probably in her mid-60s, with her silver hair pulled back in a French braid. Sharon had a youthful energy about her. Boyd, what brings you here? Come in, she waved us inside. As I fully expected, her house had more Christmas decorations than a store that carried a full inventory of them. She even put Boyd's decor to shame. What I really liked was that her house smelled like cinnamon. It made me want a snickerdoodle. Cinnamon was one of my favorite spices, and I used it whenever I could. Sharon, this is my friend Tillie Moore. I know who you are. You own the pet bakery that opened a little over a year ago. Hillary has mentioned you. Please, have a seat. She directed us to the kitchen table, which had a miniature Christmas tree in the middle and snowman salt and pepper shakers. I just took cinnamon banana bread out of the oven. Can I cut you each a slice? Boyd rubbed his ample belly. You know I would never turn that down. It's like you knew I was coming. Sharon makes the best banana bread in town, hands down. Yes, I do own the pet bakery, and banana bread is my favorite, and I would love to try yours. Good, I didn't want to eat alone, and I like it best when I've just taken it out of the oven, she said. Can I help with anything? I asked. Not at all. You two take a seat and hang your coats on your chairs. I just brewed a fresh pot of coffee. I had finished my latte on the drive out, but I could think of nothing better to go with my banana bread. Coffee, please, I said, and so did Boyd. Sharon busied herself around the kitchen, and soon slices of the cinnamon banana bread were sitting in front of us, along with steaming cups of coffee. Sharon took a bite and sighed. That first bite never gets old, she said. It's absolutely delicious, Sharon, I agreed. I must get your recipe. Of course, I'd be more than happy to share. Now tell me what brings you two by this morning. Tillie here is helping me investigate and figure out who killed Ed, Boyd said. I suppressed a grin. He had a much more serious tone than I had heard from him before. It was cute. Are you a private investigator on the side or something? She asked. I shook my head. No, just a concerned citizen. She figured out who killed that fellow around Halloween. Oh, well, the more the merrier. This whole holiday season so far has been a nightmare. Nothing like this has happened in my entire time as president of the Holiday Jubilee Board. Can you think of anyone who would want to ruin the Jubilee? I asked. No, though, obviously someone does. I can't believe I didn't take those letters seriously. I assume Hillary did tell you about the letters? She did. You don't have any idea who sent them? I asked. No, and I didn't take them seriously, which now I regret. Had I done so, maybe Ed would still be alive. There was a catch in Sharon's voice. It's not your fault, I said to her. Don't be so hard on yourself, Sharon, Boyd added. Do you think that one of the other Santa applicants might have had bitter feelings that they didn't get the job? Except for Wyatt, no. They seemed fine, but I could be wrong. No one else has shown any kind of displeasure to you or the Jubilee Board, I asked. Never anything more than a comment about one of the vendors. Or that one year when Wyatt got angry at a parent and yelled, which of course was inappropriate. However, that's to be expected with any event. Not everyone will be happy with everything, but we've never had an issue anyone would kill for. Except someone had. Could I have the contact information for the other applicants besides Wyatt? I asked. Sure. I don't have the printouts here, but I can email them to you. I keep them in the cloud, she said. My granddaughter taught me. That was super cute. When we left, I had the emails with the Santa resumes, and Boyd and I both carried slices of banana bread she had insisted we take home. I didn't know which I was happier about, the banana bread or that one of these Santas who didn't get the job could be a real lead. Disgruntled people could do crazy things. Chapter 16. Boyd had to get to work, so I dropped him off at his car at the bakery. I popped in to make sure Missy was fine. There was a customer in the store, so I told her I was going to run over to Tina's bakery and get a couple of muffins to take to Ben. Then I would bring us both one back. Sweet things were Ben's favorite, and I wanted to talk to him about the Santa candidates who didn't get the job. I was taking a risk that he would tell me to absolutely not talk to them, but Boyd and I had already decided to do it tomorrow before he had to go to work. Plus, I wanted to see him. Luckily, there had been street parking available outside my shop, so I was able to walk to the bakery. I pushed open the door, and the scent of roasted apples hit me. It smelled like a giant apple pie. Tillie, what brings you in today? Tina said from behind the counter. I want to get whatever smells so delicious. 4 of them. That smell is the apple pie muffins I just took out of the oven. If only I could bottle that scent. With all the cupcakes, cakes, and muffins I make, I think this one is my favorite. In fact, I had to bake an extra batch. This morning, I had a little rush and went through them quite quickly. I'm glad that you are staying busy. It's definitely busier than last December, which is a good thing for everyone. All in the same box? No, can I get 2 boxes of 2? Sure. Tina slid the door to her display case open and grabbed a pink box with white polka dots, her branding. She lined it with polka-dotted tissue paper before reaching in to get the muffins. It's definitely been better than I expected. Tina tied a pink bow around the box and grabbed another one, doing the same process over again. She sat the boxes on the counter and rang me up. "How do you feel about fruitcake?" "What?" "You know, like a modern twist on Grandma's fruitcake that was hard as a brick." "I don't know. I honestly can't imagine anything fruitcake being all that tasty." "You have people asking for fruitcake?" "I did, actually. I mean, I about fell over when they asked me about making them one, but I did have a recipe." Could Tina have made the fruitcake that poisoned Boyd? "Who ordered it?" "Not anyone who had been here before. His name was Charles McCall. I normally don't remember things like that, but it was such an unusual request I remembered." Charles McCall didn't sound familiar to me either. It seemed like another one of those coincidences Ben wouldn't believe in. "You can try it. Maybe in a limited batch, which is what I do when I'm trying something I might think is a little bit out there at the pet bakery. Then I give them away to get feedback." "That's a good idea." "Thanks." "No, thank you for the muffins." I went back to my car and headed to the police station. Now I was really glad I was going to talk to Ben. Unless he had already assumed that maybe it came from Tina's bakery and had talked to her, but I was sure she would have said something. Peggy was on the phone when I walked in, but she actually smiled and held up her finger, telling me to wait just a minute. I stood there while she finished up, holding the box muffins in my hand. Ben liked apple pie, and I hoped Peggy did too. "Sorry about that. Are you here to see Ben?" "If he is available. But I have something for you." I sat the box on the counter with several napkins from Tina's. When I untied the ribbon, the scent of apple pie escaped the box. It was almost like being in the bakery again. "That smells lovely. What is it?" "Take one. It's an apple pie muffin." I tilted the box so she could easily reach in and take one of the muffins. "I was just thinking I needed a little snack. This is perfect. Thank you so much for thinking of me, and thank you for the recipe for your Christmas cookies. Have you made them yet?" "I haven't had time, but I plan to this weekend." "You'll have to let me know how they turn out." "I will. What are you doing here?" Ben asked. I turned in the direction of his voice. "I happened to be in the area and had 2 extra apple pie muffins that I thought I would drop off for you and Peggy. You have a minute?" "I think I can find some time since you brought me a muffin. Peggy, can you make sure this gets scanned in and filed?" He handed her a sheaf of papers. "I sure can. Thanks again, Tillie," she said when we started to walk away. "You're welcome." When we were out of earshot, I said, "I should have brought her treats sooner. I think we're actually friends now." "I told you she didn't dislike you." "Maybe not, but she wasn't overly friendly until I brought her the Christmas cookies. In any case, things seem to be fine now." "Can I eat this right now as a pre-lunch snack?" Ben asked. "Of course. That's why I brought it. For you to eat." "So what is it you have to tell me?" "You don't think I came here just to bring you a muffin?" "Not hardly," he said, taking a bite. "Wow, this is delicious. I need to get over there more often. I stopped in a couple times to get cupcakes for someone's birthday, and once for a cake for one of the officers who retired. I don't really think about stopping there just for myself." "You definitely should then. She has a lot of stuff that you would like." "Anyways, I didn't mean to derail you from what you stopped in for," Ben said. "Boyd and I met with Sharon this morning. She told me about the 2 candidates that weren't chosen besides Wyatt Gingerbread. I wondered if you had talked to them already." "I did." "What did you find out?" "Tillie, you can trust me. You know you can trust me. If you don't tell me, I will just have to use information you might not have. You wouldn't be attempting to interfere in a police investigation, would you?" "Never. I'm just teasing. I will tell you, even if you don't share with me, though it's just not very nice. What I can tell you is, no one is off my suspect list." "I can understand that, even though now I feel it has got to be someone who has a beef with the entire Jubilee, not just with Ed. What did you find out that you think I might not know? Ben asked. When I picked up the muffins from Tina, she mentioned someone had ordered a fruitcake from her that was picked up the same day that Ed was murdered. And she just happened to tell you that? Not really. She asked me if I thought a modern spin on the old-fashioned, in my opinion inedible, fruitcake might be something customers would like. Ben grimaced. I don't know much about baking or running a bakery, but I do remember being forced to choke down my grandmother's fruitcake. My entire family did because my parents said she would be offended if we didn't. It was the worst part about Christmas. Yeah, I'm not so sure, even as talented a baker as Tina is. She could come up with something like a tasty fruitcake muffin. Anyways, that was the conversation. She asked me about a modern twist on fruitcake, and I said, why would you even want to try that? And she said, maybe people still like it because someone ordered an entire one from her. So you think someone ordered that fruitcake, poisoned it, and dropped it off, knowing Ed loved fruitcake? Do you think Tina killed him? I don't for a minute think Tina killed him. She just opened a business here, and I'm sure she didn't know Ed. And why would she want to tie her business back to something at the crime scene? I think the more likely story is whoever is out to ruin the Jubilee, or to kill Ed, had the fruitcake made, poisoned it, and dropped it off, just like you said. Which means it has to be someone who knew Ed and knew that he loved fruitcake. You mean like his ex-wife? Ben had a point, and I almost felt bad I had even told him. It might make Missy look even more guilty. Had I just made things worse for her? Chapter 17. The next morning, I was at the bakery. I had come in extra early since I had been out the last couple of days, and Missy had been the only one there, which meant no baking had gotten done. Boyd and I were going to Clearwater to track down the 2 Santa wannabes. I didn't have a choice but to come in early, or we would run the risk of running out of stuff. After I had just finished putting the red and white decorations on the candy cane-shaped dog bones, my phone rang. I wiped the frosting off my hands with a rag and picked up my phone. It was Georgina. Good morning, Georgina. Tillie, you're not to believe what happened, she said in a rush, obviously upset. Are you okay? I'm fine. It's Boyd. Panic coursed through my veins. What happened to Boyd? He wasn't a young man by any means, and several scenarios ran through my head, each one worse than the one before it. Someone attacked him and he's in the hospital. He was attacked? Where? When? How is he? All I know is he was brought in last night. I'm at the hospital right now dropping off flowers, and I just happened to see him as I was walking down the hall. He is sleeping, so I couldn't talk to him. So I asked a nurse what happened, and all they would tell me was he was brought in last night. Do you think this has to do with everything that's going on about the Jubilee? I hate to say yes, but it sure seems like it. I mean, why else would someone attack an 82-year-old man? I'm at the bakery right now, but Missy will be here soon because Boyd and I were going to check out the other Santa applicants. But I will come right to the hospital instead. You think I should stay until you get here? I would hate for him to wake up and be all alone. I think that would be a great idea. He doesn't have any family who live in the area, and I hate for anyone to be alone in the hospital. Okay, then. I didn't plan on being back to the flower shop until later today, so you don't need to rush. The back door opened, which meant Missy was here. It was an automatic locking door, and she had a key to get in from the outside. It shouldn't take me long. Missy just came in. I'll catch her up to speed on where I am with baking, and then I'll come over. Thanks for calling, Georgina, I said and hung up. What's going on? Missy asked. I explained to her about Boyd being attacked, and she was horrified. But I hadn't yet told her about the whole fruitcake situation because I didn't want her to worry more than she already was. What are you waiting for? Go, she said. You should still have enough time to frost the other sheet of candy cane bones before we open. I took them out 20 minutes ago, so they should be cool enough that the frosting won't run. I'll have plenty of time or I won't. In either case, you should go. Thanks, Missy. You've really been picking up the slack. We're a team. Please call and tell me how Boyd is doing when you find out. I will. As we were talking, I had been rushing around. Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles were picking up my nervous energy and prancing around. Listen, guys, I need to go to the hospital and I'm not sure dogs are allowed, so stay with Missy, okay? I swore they sometimes understood every word I said because they calmed down a little and just sat there watching me. Maybe if you're good, Missy will let you test candy cane bones, I said before walking out the door. Then I raced to the hospital, just hoping Boyd was okay and feeling angry at what kind of person would harm an elderly man. I couldn't wait until they got caught, and I knew they would. Georgina texted me while I was on my way to the hospital to tell me Boyd was in room 4114. While I felt like I should be bringing him something, I didn't know exactly what he might need. It made better sense to see him and find out, than go get it. By the time I made it to Boyd's room, he was awake and sitting up talking to Georgina. Tillie, you didn't have to come up here, Boyd said, a little less boisterous than normal, or maybe I was imagining that. Of course I did. I couldn't leave my favorite Santa all alone, could I? Boyd's eyes teared up. That's awfully sweet of you, and awfully sweet of you, Georgina, talking to me. Georgina stood up. I should get going, but I hope you're back to normal soon. She walked over and patted him on the hand. I'm fine. I can't believe you're making this a thing. It was just a knock on the head. Not like I haven't had that happen before. Call me later, Georgina said to me. I will, and thanks. I turned back to Boyd. How often do you get knocked on the head? It's not a big deal. They treat me like some old coot, making me stay in here overnight for observation, he complained. No offense, Boyd, but you're kind of an old coot, I said with a smile. Watch it, young lady. He was teasing. At least he was in good spirits. So tell me what happened. I don't know. I was walking out to my truck early this morning, planning to go in town and have coffee and breakfast at the diner, and next thing I knew, I was waking up face down in the snow and my neighbor was calling my name. I guess they had called 911 because then the ambulance showed up. Did you just pass out? No, because I fell face first, which is how I got this cut on my nose, but I have a huge lump on the back of my head. The doctor said someone had hit me from behind. Did you call the sheriff? I'm not involving the sheriff for a little bump on the head. Boyd, what if it was someone trying to knock you out of commission? You're an integral part of the Jubilee now. Doesn't it seem like quite a coincidence? I'm going to call the sheriff. He would want to know. I guess you're right. To be honest, I was kind of thinking along those lines, but I didn't want to think it. It's one thing to investigate someone else's murder, but to know someone might have been out to get me. Well, that's a different thing altogether. Exactly, and I don't want anything to happen to you. Can I call him right now? Boyd nodded. He wasn't as boisterous as a minute ago. In fact, he actually looked frightened. Anger bubbled up inside me again at the thought someone would attack an elderly man. I grabbed my phone from my purse and dialed Ben. He didn't answer, so I left a message. He usually doesn't take long to call back. Can I get you anything? Are you hungry? Some coffee? A book? I'm fine. I don't need anything right now. But if you don't mind getting my phone? They said it was in that closet with the rest of my things. I'd like to listen to some Christmas music. I can do that. I went and got his phone and handed it to him. He brought up playlist and Frosty the Snowman started playing. This was always my favorite song, he said. Boyd then set the phone on his chest and closed his eyes. While I listened to the Christmas carols play, I felt even more determined to find out who was behind this. I wasn't about to let someone hurt two people I cared about. Chapter 18. After leaving Boyd in the hospital, while he continued to grumble about having to spend the night, I decided to head over to the site of the holiday Jubilee. Missy had assured me she was holding the fort down, and I wanted to pop over there and see who was playing Santa. It crossed my mind that if someone wanted to play Santa bad enough, maybe they thought getting Boyd out of the way would give them their chance. My money was on Wyatt. Boyd disagreed, though. He didn't think Sharon would let Wyatt play Santa, though he admitted he wasn't sure who would then. I parked, and even though it was barely after 4 o'clock, it was already starting to get dark. While I often joked that daylight savings time ruined my motivation, I had to admit, right now, the early darkness made all the lighting at the Jubilee sparkle while I walked in. I resisted the urge to stop and get hot chocolate, though I would definitely get one on my way out. My priority right now was to see who Santa was, and I thought it would be easier to check the dressing room than to try to figure out who someone was after they were already in costume. Workers were decorating a new tree, which had been put up in a different spot from the old one. There was also still crime scene tape around it. It kind of put a damper on the festive holiday look, but I understood the police had to do their thing. I was just glad Sharon was able to get a new tree up so soon, and that the police didn't shut down the entire festival. The costume tent was behind the stage, but I was feeling a little apprehensive because I didn't belong there. I walked in, and people were just doing their own thing, not even paying attention to me, the same way it had been when I walked in with Boyd. Loud voices came from the room in the back. It sounded like Wyatt and Sharon. No one seemed to be bothered. Was it something that happened often? When I reached the door, I stood there for a second, not wanting to knock and interrupt them. Perhaps I should have waited until the yelling subsided, but the door opened. Amanda walked out. "You might not want to go in there. It's a little heated," she said. "What's going on?" "Sharon and Wyatt are fighting. He feels he should be Santa, and she was just going to not have Santa tonight and hope Boyd was better by tomorrow." "What is the problem with Wyatt filling in, if it's just for one day?" I asked. "I don't exactly know the entire story. I just know something happened one time when Wyatt filled in for Boyd several years ago before my time. Ever since, Sharon has never let him fill in." That certainly seemed interesting. Boyd had mentioned Wyatt didn't have the sweetest disposition, but surely in a time like this, it wasn't that big of a deal where Sharon couldn't make an exception. "Hopefully they can get this figured out before it's time to start," Amanda continued. "I got tired of listening to them argue, so I'm going to get some hot chocolate. Want to join me?" "No, thank you. I'm planning on getting some on my way out. Hot chocolate is delicious." "That it is. And I would enter at your own risk. Sharon is a sweetheart, but Wyatt can be grumpy on a good day, and this isn't a good day." "Thanks for the warning," I said. Part of me wanted to join her because Sharon and Wyatt were still arguing. However, I had come here for information, and I wasn't going to leave without it. When I was just about to knock on the door, it was yanked open. Sharon started to walk out, and then stopped in her tracks, clearly surprised I was standing there. She didn't say anything. At first, it was a little awkward, so I thought I would break the ice. "I came from visiting Boyd in the hospital. I thought I would offer my services and see if there was anything I could help with. Sorry that you're dealing with all this." Sharon sighed. "I appreciate it. This is turning out to be the worst holiday jubilee in history. You'd think he could refrain from arguing with me, with everything else going on." She jerked her thumb behind her. Obviously, she was talking about Wyatt. I peered over her left shoulder. He was putting on the Santa costume. I was a little surprised, after what Amanda said, that he had won this fight. "If you are serious about helping, I'm getting ready to head over to the new tree and give them a hand to decorate. You're welcome to join me." While I really wanted to talk to Wyatt, my guess was, after the argument with Sharon, he would be even less likely to entertain my questions than normal. Sure, I'd love that. I didn't mind helping decorate the tree for Christmas, and maybe I would just wait and try to catch Wyatt later when he had calmed down. We walked over to the area where probably 20 volunteers were working. It was a big tree, about 15 feet high, I would have estimated, and I couldn't even begin to comment on the circumference. But it sure wasn't tiny. "It's a gorgeous tree. I've never seen trees that big around here." "We don't get them from around here. They come from northern Michigan, from the farm who specializes in big trees like these." "Let me guess. It's expensive." Sharon nodded. "Yes, and that is another issue with this year's Jubilee. We're way over budget. Ed was making less than Boyd based on his experience, so we reallocated that money to having more decorations. But now, having to buy an all-new tree and a whole new set of decorations, we might actually be in the hole for the first time in my tenure. The stress was evident in the way her jaw was clenched. She was feeling a lot of pressure. "It's not your fault, though," I said. "No one on the board is at fault." "I know it isn't, but I feel responsible. Anyway, enough negative talk. Let's get this tree decorated. If you want to go over and help Pat put up those silver stars, then I can work with this box of ornaments here. I'd like to get done by 5, before it's completely dark." "That's completely doable." I walked over to the person she'd pointed out as Pat and spent the next 45 minutes, along with the other volunteers, putting ornaments on the tree. It was almost too dark to see, but once the lights to new tree were flipped on, colorful lights glowed in every direction. The entire area lit up, and there were quite a few faces with huge smiles. It made me feel good to have been a little part of this. "Thanks so much, Tillie, for helping," Sharon said, walking over to me. "Not a problem at all. Do you mind if I ask you a question?" "Of course not. What's on your mind?" "I don't know him well, but Wyatt is a little cranky. Is it really that big of a deal to cover for Boyd one time? I'm not trying to judge your decisions. I'm just genuinely curious." "Yes and no. Honestly, at this point, I'm probably overthinking things. But Wyatt has a record, and I just don't feel that's the kind of person we want to be Santa. If people found out, it could look very bad for our event." "You mean a criminal record?" "Yes, for assault. Assault on a parent of one of the kids who came to see Santa." "May I ask how the heck that happened?" "This happened, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, but there was a line of kids with their parents to see Santa. Boyd was Santa back then, of course, and Wyatt heard a parent yelling at his kid. The parent had smacked the kid across the face. Wyatt just went crazy and beat the guy within an inch of his life, so it was a felony assault. I'm not saying part of me doesn't feel the man deserved it, but still, the law is the law." "I understand your position." And I did. Not only was Wyatt short-tempered, but he also had a violent streak. Even if he didn't think he would ever become Santa, maybe he just didn't want anyone else to be Santa either. Chapter 19. "I don't need to use a wheelchair," Boyd grumbled to the nurse. I had come to pick Boyd up and take him home, but he wasn't much for being fussed over. "Well, Mr. Sweet, it's hospital protocol, so if you could please indulge me, I'd appreciate it. You wouldn't want me to get in trouble now, would you?" The nurse, whose name I thought was Janine, attempted to convince him. She glanced at me, her eyes twinkling. Even though Boyd was giving her a hard time, it was impossible to get mad at the guy. He was so endearing. "Can you do it for me?" she asked him. "I like fussing over you." "Fine, but only because you asked so nicely," he grumbled. "Is that everything, Boyd?" I pointed to a bag sitting on the chair, which I presumed held his belongings. "Yes, that's it," he replied. I grabbed the bag. We headed out of the hospital room toward the main entrance. "I'll go pull the car around," I said. "I can walk just fine," he protested. "Wait right here," I said, ignoring Boyd and his attitude. A light snowfall had started, and with the temperature in the mid-20s, I didn't think Boyd, who had just gotten out of the hospital, should be out in the cold. There was a 100% chance he wouldn't agree, which was why I didn't give him the opportunity to argue. I got in the car and gave it a few minutes to warm up before I drove back around to where Boyd waited. "Took you long enough," he said when I pulled up. "You better watch it or I'll make you walk home," the nurse teased. "That would be better than being hovered over," Boyd mumbled. His words didn't bother me. He was just joking, and I respected the fact he wanted to be independent. I couldn't argue with someone for that. Once I got him settled in the car, I waved goodbye to the nurse. "Where to? Are you hungry?" "Want to get a pastry?" I asked. "I wouldn't mind something to eat." "The food they give you in the hospital is bad enough to kill you," Boyd said with a smirk. "Anything sound good?" "You like Thai food?" "I love it." Let's do that, Boyd suggested. Thai Palace? I asked, referring to the Thai place in town. No, I've got a much better place than that. Is it over in Clearwater? No, it's in Sweet Haven, he said with a grin. How bad is your head? There's only one Thai place in town, I said skeptically. My memory is just fine, thank you, and you haven't lived here that long, so don't presume to know everything. The restaurant is in Sweet Haven, but not in town. Go through here and make a right. I didn't doubt his certainty, but I did kind of wonder what was going on. We were heading out of town, away from anything commercial. About 15 miles down the road, we hadn't really said much. Boyd claimed he felt fine, but the way he rubbed the back of his head said otherwise. I imagined he still had a headache, so I didn't push him to talk. The houses were sparse. We were surrounded mostly by fields. Okay, Boyd. Are you sure we're going in the right direction? I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. Don't you worry. It's about another mile up the road. I figured I just had to trust him. We went another mile, and then he told me to take a left turn. Here, take this road. In about 100 yards or so, it'll be on the right. Sure enough, about 100 yards down the road, I saw what looked like a house. Is that it? I pointed. That's it. When I slowed down, I noticed a small sign by the end of the driveway that simply read, Thai Restaurant. This is an actual restaurant? Like approved by the health department and all? Of course it is, Boyd replied. How come I've never heard of it before? Probably because you've never asked where the best Thai food is. True, I haven't. But if it's so good, why doesn't anyone mention it? Listen, the reason Mama keeps this restaurant out here is to keep the tourists away. The last thing we want is for them to fall in love with her food and make this place so busy that we can't get in. Part of me wondered if that was actually a good business model. But apparently, the place thrived with things being the way they were. How long has this place been here? I asked. Probably about 30 years. Mama Chai still comes in to cook, and her grandson runs the day-to-day business operations. We walked up to the front door, and Boyd, being the ever-gallant gentleman, opened it for me. As soon as we stepped inside, I was hit with amazing aromas. If the food tasted as good as it smelled, no wonder the locals didn't want anyone finding out about this place. The restaurant was small, with only 8 tables. There was a cash register with the menu displayed behind it and a sign at the other end of the counter which read, Pickup. It was definitely no frills, but I immediately loved it. Anything you recommend? I asked. I'm a creature of habit. I always get the same thing. The pad thai with chicken. We ordered our food and took our seats. Boyd looked at me expectantly when I took the first bite. It was important to him that I liked it, and I was fully prepared to lie if I had to. Luckily, I quickly realized I didn't need to. The food was amazing. Boyd, you're right. This is probably the best pad thai I've ever had. It's a lot better than Thai Palace. Not that I'd say that out loud and hurt their feelings. I knew you'd like it, he said with a grin. It didn't take long before we were finished, and I took care of our plates. We went to walk back out to the car, but Boyd paused by the door. I don't want to go home, he admitted. I've been sitting around too much. While I appreciate your determination, I really think you need to go home and rest. But if you insist, I'll stay with you. You're not going to win this one. He gave me a look, and I decided not to argue further. Let's go, I said. When we got back to his house, I helped him settle in. You just rest. I'll grab us some hot chocolate. Do you want anything else? No, I'm fine. Today's been enough, he said. Well, I know you're being stubborn, but I'm going to be just as stubborn about staying. Boyd grumbled a little, but I had a feeling he wasn't all that upset. I went to the kitchen to grab the hot chocolate and then made a quick call to Missy at the bakery. Thank you for calling Pawpaw's Pet Bakery. This is Missy. Hey, it's me. Just wanted to let you know I got Boyd back home and he's relaxing now. Everything's fine. Glad to hear it. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't want to bother you at all today. It's not a bother. Things are quiet here, so I guess it's not all bad. No, I can agree with that. I just don't want him pushing himself too hard, I said. Anyways, how are Mr. Cuddles and Daisy and Beans doing? They're fine as always, Missy replied, laughing. The majority of the time, they act like they run the place, and honestly, I let them think they do. Same here. Listen, I'll be staying here with Boyd for a bit. I know it's probably dramatic to say, but I feel bad about dropping him off and leaving. Don't worry about it. Thanks a million for checking in, Missy said. I hung up and headed toward Boyd's chair, where he was relaxing. Later, while I ran some errands, I noticed a man across the way, standing still and staring. He wasn't interacting with the crowd much, unlike everyone else, and for some reason, his presence rubbed me the wrong way. He saw me staring at him and held my gaze for a few seconds, long enough to make me even more uncomfortable. Was I overreacting because of the events of the last few days, or was there something genuinely sinister about this guy? Chapter 20. The man left abruptly a minute or so after we locked eyes. Was it because he had seen me watching him? Boyd would be busy for the next 2 hours, so I decided to follow the guy and see where he went. Luckily, it was pretty busy, and I didn't have much of an issue staying pretty close behind him. I kept enough people between us so he couldn't tell, or maybe he wasn't at all worried. In any case, it certainly made things easier for me. However, following him wasn't helpful because he just headed right out to the parking lot. I stopped once I got to the front gates. It wasn't like I was going to leave and continue in my car. My imagination was probably overacting anyways. After finishing the last of my hot chocolate, I tossed the cup in the trash when I passed the hot chocolate stand again on my way back to Santa's workshop. I hesitated for just a second, thinking about getting a second one. It was cold outside, I was helping the Boy Scouts, and it wasn't like I had this many hot chocolates all the time, except I didn't need that much sugar. Instead, I bypassed the hot chocolate stand for one a couple of vendors down, which was just selling hot coffee and hot tea. The first sip of the raspberry hibiscus herbal tea wasn't bad, but it wasn't nearly as satisfying as that hot chocolate would have been. Still, my hips would thank me. 2 hours wasn't a long time overall, but when standing out in the cold, it was a different story. I could have walked around to help stay warm, but I didn't want to leave, on the off chance Boyd started not to feel well and needed me. After all, I had promised him I would stay, and I wasn't about to break that promise. It just wouldn't feel right. I had taken quite a liking to the guy and didn't want anything to happen to him on my watch. Finally, the time was over, and Boyd, Wyatt, and Amanda headed to the dressing room. I followed them back, swinging by and getting a hot chocolate for Boyd. Even though his suit was probably warm, it was still pretty cold out, and I thought hot chocolate would be nice. I didn't go in and just waited for Boyd to come out, which he did about 10 minutes later. He appeared exhausted, but other than that, seemed to be okay. Hot chocolate? I held up the cup, indicating it was for him, and his eyes lit up. I would love some. Thank you. You're most welcome. Do you feel okay? We headed to the car. Tired, but I would be tired at this point regardless. It has nothing to do with getting hit over the head. We made it to the car and were heading down the road when I remembered the strange guy hanging around Santa's workshop. As preoccupied as I had been with him, I couldn't believe I hadn't said something to Boyd already. Have you ever seen anyone at Santa's workshop who maybe didn't seem to belong? I asked. What do you mean? I know this seems really vague, but I saw a guy hanging around, and that just seemed odd to me. You're right. That is kind of vague. What do you mean, didn't seem to belong, like he didn't have kids with him? Well, that too. He didn't have kids with him, but then neither do I. He was probably in his mid-30s, and there was something about him that just gave me a weird feeling. We made eye contact, and he just stared at me. It was creepy. Then he left and went straight to his car. I can't say that I have, but I don't really notice anything outside the kids that are sitting on my lap. They take all my attention. I can understand that. You ever get kids who aren't nice? I can honestly say I never have. At most, I get kids that cry because they're scared. But usually, they're so excited it's adorable. Boyd started to regale me with funny stories of some of the kids who had sat on his lap over the years. Not that I had any aspiration to be Santa, but I could see why he enjoyed it so much. Even just watching the little kids going up to him was extremely adorable. While he was talking, I noticed headlights coming up behind me. I didn't think anything of it until they were right on my rear bumper, almost literally. If I had to guess, they were barely a car length behind me. "Go around me already," I muttered. Boyd glanced over his left shoulder. "They are a little too close for comfort, aren't they?" Why do people follow this close, especially when it's dark? If a deer ran out of the woods and I had to step on the brakes at all quickly, there's no way they would stop without hitting us. I let my foot off the gas just a little to slow down, hoping that would prompt them into passing me. There were no other cars coming in the other direction, and there was no reason not to pass, but instead, the car slowed down too. That didn't make me feel good. "Is your seatbelt on nice and tight?" I asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I think whoever's behind us is purposely following us." I began to wish I'd followed that guy out, at least to his car, to see what kind he drove. It was quite a leap to think some guy I had gotten a weird vibe from would now be following us. How would he know what we drove? But I was convinced whoever was behind us was there on purpose. "Should we call the police?" "Not yet, because we can't really prove anything, but I don't think I want to go directly to your house either, just in case." "I can agree with that. So let's take the long way. About half a mile up, take a right, and we can make a big half circle and come to my house from the other way. If this guy turns, then we'll know for sure he's following us, because the way I'm going to take you, there aren't many houses. And if he was going in our same direction, he wouldn't follow us. He would go directly there." I squeezed the steering wheel tighter, hoping it would stop my hands from quivering. At the first right, Boyd directed me to turn, and so did the car behind us. I was getting a bad feeling about this, and was a few seconds away from telling Boyd to call Ben on my cell phone when my head snapped forward from an unexpected impact. The car had hit us from behind. I squeezed the steering wheel even tighter and glanced over at Boyd to make sure he was okay. "I think we have our answer now," Boyd said grimly. "Can you grab my cell phone and call Ben? If he doesn't answer, then call 911. Boyd reached for the phone sitting in the little cubby in my console, but the car hit us again. At least this time, I was a little bit more ready. It didn't make it any less scary, though, when the car fishtailed a little. My instinct was to speed up and try to outrun the car, but I was afraid an impact from behind at a higher speed would be even more dangerous. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Boyd going through my contacts. He held the phone up to his ear. I mentally crossed my fingers Ben would answer, but before I heard any words coming out of Boyd's mouth, we got hit again. This time, we must have hit a small patch of ice because the car started spinning. The last thing I remembered was flying off the side of the road. Chapter 21. Tillie, Tillie. A voice from far away called my name. Was someone at the front door? I worked to pry my eyes open. It took a monumental amount of effort. My head was throbbing, making me want to keep my eyes shut. But whoever was calling my name wouldn't stop. "Tillie, can you open your eyes?" Another voice, this time from my left. I groaned and forced my eyes open. Boyd was to my right, and to my left was Ben. I was very confused for a moment until I realized I was in the car, not at home. Ben's words finally penetrated the fog in my brain. "Can you unlock the door? Tillie, can you unlock the door?" Ben called out. I fumbled to push the button, and when the lock clicked, he yanked the door open. Red and blue flashing lights surrounded us. Someone was speaking to Boyd nearby. "Are you okay? Does anything hurt?" Ben asked. There was fear in his eyes. It was concern for me. I felt bad that he was so worried. "I'm fine. I mean, my head hurts a little, but other than that, I'm okay." "Don't move until the paramedics can check you out," Ben said firmly. "I don't need all that," I protested, starting to get out of the car. But when I moved, a wave of pain and nausea rushed through my body. Maybe that hadn't been such a good idea. I closed my eyes for a second, waiting for it to pass. When I opened them, a paramedic was crouching next to me. He gently took my wrist in his hand and checked his watch. "Your pulse is elevated, but that's to be expected after the accident. It's not in dangerous territory." "Can I look into your eyes?" the paramedic asked. I nodded, which was a mistake. The pain and nausea surged all over again. He checked my eyes and then gently felt around my head. "I'm looking for any cuts, bumps, or bruises. I don't find any. Is any part of your body in pain? Do you remember hitting your head?" I tried to think, but all I could remember was getting rear-ended and then waking up a few minutes ago. I don't know if I hit it, but my head is hurting something fierce and I feel a little nauseous. "That's a sign of a concussion. You probably hit your head on the steering wheel." "I'm surprised the airbags didn't go off," Ben said. "Yeah, she's lucky she wasn't speeding, or this could have been a lot worse." "I tried slowing down," I mumbled. "Let's get you out of there before we start talking about what happened," Ben said. "Boyd, are you okay?" I called out, not wanting to turn my head toward him and risk another rush of pain. "I'm fine. It takes more than someone who doesn't know how to drive to take me out." Then, with a smirk in his voice, he added, "And I don't mean you." Boyd sounded angry, which I guessed was better than some alternatives. The paramedic and Ben gently helped me out of the car and walked me over to the ambulance. "I don't need an ambulance. Can we just get my car out of the ditch so I can go home?" "I'll get your car out of the ditch, but you're in no shape to drive," Ben replied in that no-nonsense tone of his, which meant he wasn't about to back down. He had a point. My head hurt so badly, and I wasn't really sure I could steer or focus. "Okay, fine. But can you just take me home?" "I don't need an ambulance." "You and Boyd are going to the hospital for a full checkup," the paramedic said. I started to object, but then Boyd began protesting loudly for the both of us. It was to no avail, though. Boyd and I were soon each loaded into separate ambulances and headed for the hospital, but not before I asked Ben to call Missy and see if she would take Beans, Mr. Cuddles, and Daisy home. I lay back on the gurney and closed my eyes, which brought a little relief from my pounding head. Over the next couple of hours, I was poked and prodded before being diagnosed with a mild concussion. Other than that, I was fine. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation. Now I knew exactly how Boyd had felt. I would much rather have been in my own home than stuck there in the hospital. No sooner had the nurse gotten me situated in my room than Ben walked in. His face still showed concern. I wanted to put him at ease. "I'm fine. It's just a little concussion." "A little concussion is not fine, especially when your concussion is more than little. Now, I need to ask, do you feel like you're up to talking to me about what happened?" he asked. "Yes. But first, do you know how Boyd is doing?" "He actually fared better than you, probably because his seatbelt caught him before he hit anything and you had the steering wheel closer. They aren't even keeping him for observation. One of my deputies drove him home." "That's good. Not only because I'm happy Boyd is okay, but also because I would have felt really sorry for the hospital staff if they'd tried to make him stay." "His bad mood would have been something to deal with," Ben chuckled. "You're right about that. He was already insisting there was no way he was staying the night again." "I don't think I have much to tell you," I admitted. "You said someone hit you from behind?" "Yes. About halfway to Boyd's, I noticed a car behind me. Even though we were the only cars on the road, he was right on my bumper." I didn't think much of it at first. I slowed down, hoping the car would pass me, but it didn't. That's when Boyd and I decided it might be a bad idea to go straight to his house, so we took a detour. "Why didn't you call me?" At first, I didn't think I had proof of anything other than bad driving etiquette. Once we turned to go a few miles out of the way, coming to Boyd's from the other direction, I figured if the car followed us, it would mean either they were going to the same place as us or they were purposely following us. That's when I told Boyd to call you. "You should have called me sooner. You could have been seriously hurt." Ben's tone was sharp. I still didn't think calling him sooner would have changed anything. Even if we had gotten through to him, it wouldn't have stopped the other car from trying to run us off the road, but I wasn't going to argue with him. "How did you find us anyway?" I asked. "I answered the phone just as the guy hit you from behind. I'm assuming Boyd dropped the phone, but I could hear you screaming. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my entire life. I was yelling into the phone, but you guys couldn't hear me. I'm so sorry you had to hear that." "It must have been horrible," I said softly. "It was. But I'm so glad the call connected because I was able to find you so much faster. Who knows how long you two might have been out there if that hadn't been the case." I thought about that for a second, and it gave me chills. Ben was right. Even though neither Boyd nor I had been seriously injured, being out in the cold for too long could have been dangerous, especially for Boyd. No matter how fit of an 82-year-old he was, he didn't need to be sitting in a car or wandering around in 20-degree weather. Tears welled up in the backs of my eyes, and I worked to suppress them. They would come at some point, and I needed the release. But the last thing I wanted was to make Ben feel even worse. So I decided to change the subject. "I don't know if this is related or not," I said, "but I was at the Jubilee hanging out at Santa's workshop. I was really worried about Boyd wanting to go to work, since he'd just been checked out of the hospital, and there was a guy there who just gave me the creeps. I followed him out to the parking lot, but then I went back inside when he started walking toward his car. Do you think he somehow waited until we left and followed us?" "What did this guy do to make you think he would do that?" Ben asked. "I don't know. It was just a feeling." He looked at me, and it gave me chills. It wasn't one of the friendly looks I'd exchanged with other people at the festival. He was standing there for a good 5 or 10 minutes before he noticed me looking at him, and then he abruptly left. "What did he look like?" I described him, though it probably wasn't very helpful. There were plenty of 30-something men of average build with brown hair. "Did you see what he was driving?" "No, I didn't pay attention after he walked out." "Did you happen to see any details about the car that hit you from behind?" "Just that it was an SUV or a truck because of how high the lights were. It definitely wasn't a car, or the lights wouldn't have been so blinding in my Jeep." "Sorry, I know it's not much to go on." "Don't be sorry. You only know what you know," Ben reassured me. "Do you think it could have something to do with Ed's murder?" "Why would it have anything to do with Ed's murder? Unless you think snooping around might have made somebody mad." He gave me a pointed look. "I can't imagine anyone I've talked to being bothered. It just seems like too much of a coincidence that Boyd was attacked, and now the car Boyd was riding in was attacked. You know, Wyatt Gingerbread really wants to be Santa? Maybe he had something to do with it." I hated to say it because I didn't have any proof, just his burning desire to be Santa. Could he possibly have wanted it that badly? I didn't ask Ben, but it was definitely something I would bring up with Boyd. Chapter 22. In a few minutes, my doctor was releasing me from the hospital. Last night, I had called Missy to tell her what happened, then again this morning to let her know I would be late. She immediately started telling me I was crazy and needed to stay home. To be honest, I didn't argue with her much because I still had one heck of a headache. While I wasn't supposed to drive or look at screens, the thought of lying on the couch, listening to music or an audiobook sounded a lot better than standing up, waiting on customers or baking. Still, I felt so guilty for leaving Missy alone so much lately. Not to mention, she had stayed the night at my house to take care of Beans, Mr. Cuddles, and Daisy. I didn't want to take advantage of her kindness. "You've just been doing so much for me lately," I said. "You've helped me plenty, so I don't even want to hear it. You go home and rest, and after work, I'll drop the animals off to you, unless you want them now, in which case you can stop by and pick them up." On one hand, I really wanted some animal snuggles, but on the other, a few hours at home in silence, with no one wanting anything from me, sounded like just what the doctor ordered, or rather, better than what the doctor ordered, which was for me to stay in the hospital last night. I hadn't gotten much sleep there at all because of the noises I wasn't used to. Mr. Cuddles, Daisy, and Beans loved being at the bakery with Missy, so they wouldn't be missing out. If you don't mind bringing them home after work, that'd be great. I would really like to go home and rest. I really appreciate it. Of course. You know what? I'll even bring dinner. How does that sound? I wanted to argue. But Missy was doing exactly what I would have done in the same situation. I might as well accept her help. Plus, dinner would be a bonus. That would be wonderful. You got it. See you a little bit after 6. We hung up just when Ben walked into the room. Are you ready for me to spring you from this place? He asked. Am I ever? The care has been phenomenal, but the noise at all hours of the night didn't make for a good night's sleep. Oh, I bet. I've got some good news, though. Did you catch the guy who hit us? Or I guess it could be a girl as well. Not yet. That would be great news. The good news is that there's not as much damage to the Jeep as I had feared. It's mostly on the back end, which just pushed the fender in a bit, but it doesn't impact driving it. I took the liberty of getting your insurance information from the glove box. I contacted them, sent them pictures, and they said they'd get you an estimate within 24 hours. Then I had Bob from the garage bend the fender back so it's not rubbing against the door anymore. So you can at least drive it without too much trouble until the insurance is sorted out and you can get it repaired or a rental. Tears started to fill my eyes. How lucky I was to have a friend like Missy and a friend. Maybe more than that, though we hadn't really had that conversation yet, like Ben, who would do so much for me. Hey, I didn't mean to make you cry. Did I overstep my bounds? Ben asked. No, I said in a rush. I'm just overwhelmed. Right before you walked in, I got off the phone with Missy. She's just being so helpful, and now you're being so helpful. I'm just truly grateful to have such good friends. I get it. It's one of the things I love about Sweet Haven. It really is a community. Now, are you sure you feel like you can drive? If not, I can drive you home and have one of the deputies pick me up so I can get my car. The doctor said I could drive. I feel completely fine, and you've already done enough. Ben nodded in agreement. The nurse came in with the wheelchair. It seemed like forever ago when I had gone through this process with Boyd, even though I did not complain the way he had. In reality, it was only a day ago, but a lot had happened since then. I made it home without incident, but my head hurt worse from concentrating on driving. It was a relief to get home. Walking into the house without anyone to greet me felt a little strange, and I kind of regretted leaving the animals at the bakery. But it was the right thing to do to get the maximum amount of rest. I made some hot tea and took it to the couch, where I sat down for a few minutes. After setting the tea aside, I pulled my red fuzzy blanket with green Christmas trees over me. I turned on a Christmas show with instrumental Christmas music, lowered the volume, and closed my eyes. What felt like just a few minutes later, I woke up. But when I looked at the clock, I noticed I had been asleep for a solid 2 hours. I still felt tired. 2 hours didn't make up for the sleepless night, but my headache was half as bad as it had been before I lay down. There were 2 missed calls from Boyd. Without bothering to sit up, I tucked the phone under my head so I was a little more inclined. Then I called him back. How are you feeling? Boyd asked without even saying hi. The concern in his voice came through the phone. I'm fine. Just a little bit of a lingering headache, but I'm fine, I replied. That's good to hear. I was really worried about you. Do you think this is related to the attack on you yesterday? Or was that the day before? It seems a little coincidental that someone would attack you and then the next day try to run us off the road. That's exactly what I think, and I feel so bad that... Don't think that. Not for a minute. How could you have known someone would go to such lengths? The more important thing to focus on is figuring out who's behind this. I just can't imagine someone wanting to be Santa so badly that they'd go to such extremes. Sharon told me what Wyatt did and why, at least under her watch, he'll never be Santa. He obviously has a temper. You don't think even a little that he could have done something like this? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I waited patiently for Boyd to think. He is a hothead, and he does desperately want to be Santa. That's a fact, Boyd admitted. But we're friends. We've even hung out outside of festival times. He's been to my house. For 15 years I've known him. I just can't imagine he'd do this to me. People were more often harmed by those they knew than by strangers, but I didn't want to say that. I was more convinced Wyatt was the best suspect. I think Wyatt is an obvious choice, but not the best choice, Boyd said. Did the sheriff tell you he's not sure if Ed's death, the attack on me, and what happened last night are related? He did mention that. Right now, there's no clear correlation. I can't see how they aren't related, but I can also see why he needs to stay objective until he finds more evidence to connect them. You don't think someone is targeting Santa, and now that I'm Santa, there have been 2 attacks on me, is related? Boyd asked. If it was related, why did they kill Ed, but only hit you over the head, and then try to run you off the road? Maybe they didn't mean to kill Ed. Whoever did it could have poisoned the fruitcake too much. That could be a possibility. Maybe whoever poisoned the fruitcake thought they were just putting him out of commission for a while. I wonder if Ben has any toxicology reports back yet. I have no idea how long that stuff takes. Would he even tell you if he did? Probably not. I think we should go talk to the other 2 Santa candidates. That could be a good start, Boyd suggested. I definitely need to go into work for a little bit tomorrow. I explained how I had left Missy in charge so much lately and was feeling guilty about it. Why don't you go in during the afternoon? We can visit the other Santa candidates in the morning and see what we come up with. Sounds like a good plan. Boyd and I talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Immediately, my phone rang again. I looked at the display. It was Missy. Hey, Missy, I'm so glad I let you talk me into staying home. I had a great nap and feel like a new person. There were sounds on the other end of the line, but Missy wasn't talking. Missy, are you okay? I asked. My voice rose with my anxiety. No, Tillie. Sheriff Donovan is here to arrest me. I need you to come up to the bakery. What? I nearly shouted. Just hurry. He said he'd give me the courtesy of letting you come in so I wouldn't have to lock the store, but he's not going to wait forever. I'll be right there. I jumped off the couch and ran to where my boots were, then stuffed my feet into them. After grabbing my scarf, I wound it around my neck and pulled on my coat. My heart was racing. Why was Ben doing this? What had changed? Was there something new that had made him think Missy was guilty? The thought made my stomach churn. I dashed to the car and sped out of the driveway. Gravel spit from underneath the tires. As much as I wanted to floor it, I forced myself to stay at the speed limit so I wouldn't get into an accident or get pulled over. All the way to the bakery, my mind raced, wondering what information Ben could have uncovered that had driven him to arrest Missy. Chapter 23. I made it to the bakery and parked out back next to the sheriff's vehicle. Ben must have left his truck back here and walked around to the front, which I appreciated. Truth be told, I was a little annoyed, even though I had absolutely no right to be. Why hadn't you given me a heads up since I had just seen him a few hours ago? My head was pounding again. All the good effects from my nap were gone. Anxiety coursed through my veins. I couldn't imagine how Missy felt if I was this way. When I walked through the back door, I stopped short. Ben was sitting at the break table. "What are you doing back here?" I said. The swinging door between the front of the bakery and the production area opened with a bang. Daisy, Beans, and Mr. Cuddles barged through, wanting attention like they hadn't seen me in a million years. I gave them all a pet and looked back up to Ben. I didn't see the need to stay up front and advertise to everyone coming in that I was here. "You're not worried Missy is going to take off?" I said, a bit sarcastically. But then I felt bad. Ben was just doing his job. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I just can't believe that you think Missy could kill someone. What happened that made you finally decide that you had to arrest her?" "Tillie, I would tell you if I could." "I know, but I just saw you this morning. Did you know this morning that you were going to arrest her?" He didn't say anything, which I took as a yes. I sighed. "Do you really need to arrest her?" He nodded. I shouldn't have even waited for you to get here, but I didn't want to have to close the business. Once I knew you were going home to rest after the hospital, I wanted to give you time to do that before you had to deal with this. I appreciate it. I know you didn't have to do that. The annoyance I felt at him knowing and not telling me slipped away. Not only did he not owe me an explanation, but he had gone above and beyond to be nice, which he didn't have to do. Is there someone you can call to help you? I'm not sure you need to be on your feet for the rest of the day with your concussion. If I could prolong it longer, I would have. I know. It's okay. I don't feel bad, and I can call Chelsea to help me out. Should I go out front and send Missy back here so there's no spectacle? That would be great. I had been standing there since walking in, holding my purse and my coat, with the animals around me. After putting my things away, I grabbed my apron, pulling it over my head, and tied the strings. I took a deep breath and walked out front. One look at Missy's face almost made me tear up, but I held them back. The last thing I wanted to do was make things worse for Missy, and she looked on the brink. Personally, I wasn't sure that I would have been able to keep it together as well as she was. Tillie, I can't believe this is happening. I really thought Ben would find out who actually did this, and just being brought into the police station for questioning would be a distant bad memory, she said in a shaky voice. Did Ben say why? Not yet. He said he would talk to me down at the station. I'm so sorry you had to come down here. Don't worry about it. I'm more concerned about you. Ben's waiting in the back, so go ahead, and I'll call Chelsea to see if she can come in and watch the store. Then I'll come down to the police station. What if they don't set bail and I have to stay in there? Her voice cracked with the emotion. That was a very real possibility. While I didn't want to give her false hope, I also didn't want to be negative and dash her spirits. Don't think like that. You've got to have faith that it's all going to work out. I hope you're right. She bent to pet Beans, Mr. Cuddles, and Daisy. I wished I could send them with her for moral support. She walked to the back a few minutes later, and the back door shut. I picked up my phone to call Chelsea and explain the situation. She told me she would be right over. An hour later, I made it to the police station and walked up to Peggy at the front desk. I'm afraid the sheriff is busy, she said, but in a much nicer tone than she had used in the past, even though I didn't have any baked goods for her. I really felt we had turned the corner in our relationship. I didn't expect him to be. He just came and arrested my employee. The one who killed that Santa Claus? I mean, allegedly killed. Sorry. Sometimes working here, you get a bit jaded. I get it. I know it's probably too soon to know, but do you know if she's going to get bail? That's going to be up to the judge at her arraignment. Do you know when that's going to be? I asked. Probably sometime tomorrow. Patience wasn't one of my virtues on a good day, and this wasn't a good day. I couldn't imagine Missy being stuck here until tomorrow. Can I ask you a question? And you absolutely don't have to answer. I probably shouldn't be asking you in the first place. You can go ahead and ask. And if I don't feel I can answer, then I won't, Peggy said. Do you know what it is that the sheriff finally found out which caused him to arrest her? Peggy fidgeted a little, like my question made her a bit uncomfortable. While I felt bad for putting her in a weird position, I needed to help Missy by finding out what had been the tipping point. All I will say is that he got some kind of tip. I don't know from who or what it was. I just know last night he got a call, and after he got off the phone, he met with the prosecutor. Is there any way I can see her now? I asked. Not until he's done questioning her, but once she's fully booked. Visiting hours are until 8 o'clock, which is 5 hours away. So yeah, if you want to wait, you can see her tonight. Then I'll wait. Can you tell me when I can see her? Of course. I walked over to one of the chairs in the waiting room and sat down. It was like sitting on rocks, though it was much better than what Missy was going through. Someone had to be setting her up, but who? Chapter 24. I was tired, but there was no resting on the furniture in the police station. It was more intolerable than the used futon I had bought for my first apartment, and that was saying something. I called Chelsea to make sure everything was okay at the bakery and asked if she could take Mr. Cuddles, Beans, and Daisy to my house and feed them. It had been a few hours, and it was already close to closing time and their dinner time. I honestly didn't know how much longer I would be, and I didn't want them to have to wait. Then I went through my email, paid a couple of bills, and started to play solitaire. It made me wonder how on earth people use their phones to do so much. Even logging into my bank to pay a bill seemed so difficult on the tiny screen. After what seemed like forever, footsteps walked toward me. It was Ben. I immediately jumped up. "Can I see her?" "Yes, but not long. Visiting hours are almost over here." "You can't actually believe that she killed him?" It was a little bit ridiculous to ask because, of course, someone thought she did it, or he wouldn't have arrested her. "I'll just let you talk to her." He rubbed his hand over his face, looking exhausted. "Thank you," I said. He led me back out of the lobby and through the doorway, where the offices and the holding cells were, along with interrogation rooms. Ben opened the door and ushered me in. Missy sat there, terrified and upset. "You have about 15 minutes. Ben walked out and closed the door behind him. I sat down facing Missy. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "This seems so surreal, like I'm going to wake up at any moment." "I can't believe the sheriff thinks I killed Ed," she said with a sob. Even though I agreed Ben wouldn't arrest her without good reason, I felt bad asking, but I didn't really think I had a choice if I was going to help her. "I'm surprised too, Missy. I can't imagine you killing anybody, but I also know Ben wouldn't arrest anyone unless he had proof. Is there a reason he thinks you did it?" "Ed's mom went to the police and told them Ed and I got in a huge fight a few weeks ago, and I threatened to kill him." When she said this, she looked down at the table. Her words gave me a sinking feeling. "I thought you hadn't talked to him since the divorce was finalized?" "I hadn't, except that one time a couple weeks ago when he called me out of the blue and asked for the wedding ring set back. I was livid. When we divided our assets in the divorce, what few assets there were, I got that set. I originally was going to sell it, but then I just couldn't bring myself to do it, but I sure as heck wasn't going to give it to him." "That's it? You just argued over some property?" I asked. I was really mad. And I'm not proud that I said this, but I told him I would see him dead before I ever gave him that ring back. That had certainly been a poor choice of words. But it was also something that people in an argument would say. But it didn't look good when the person you had said it to turned up dead. "I know how it looks, but they were just words." "However, there's more," Missy said. That really made the pit of my stomach ache. Missy saying those words to Ed shortly before he turned up dead was bad enough. "What else?" I was almost afraid to ask. "The sheriff said he found my prints on the pan that the fruitcake was in. That fruitcake was laced with aluminum phosphide, which ingesting too much can cause a heart attack." Okay, that was much worse than I had expected. "I hate to ask, but you didn't make him any fruitcake, did you?" "Of course not. Obviously, I knew that he's like the one person on the planet that loves Christmas fruitcake, which I always made fun of him for, but I didn't make it for him, and I certainly didn't poison him." "Then you just have to stay positive and believe that Ben will get to the bottom of it." I wanted to be positive for her sake, but it definitely seemed that things were leaning in the direction of her being guilty. "I have to tell you this, Tillie. The pan the fruitcake was made in came from the bakery." "Tina's?" Missy shook her head. "No, Paw's pet bakery." My eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. It was made in one of those new holiday bread tins that you bought. Not that the animals who ate our products cared too much for the little embellishments, but the pet parents did, so I always went the extra mile in terms of presentation. Before the Christmas season, I had purchased these cute bread pans, which had Christmas trees all around them. When you baked the bread, they would have Christmas trees all along the side. We made blueberry bread and pumpkin bread, and then sliced it in between the trees and frosted with green frosting where the tree was. They had been selling like hotcakes. How would someone get their hands on one of our pans? I don't know. I'm being framed, and I don't know why. And now I feel like I've dragged you into things because there's a connection to the bakery. Don't worry about me. I'm more concerned about you. Do you know what the next steps are? I don't know. I have a public defender coming to meet me tomorrow before my arraignment. I'm really not sure what's going to happen. Missy seemed defeated. A knock sounded at the door. Before I could answer, it opened. It was Ben. Time's up. Please, just a few more minutes, I said. I'm sorry, but visiting hours are over. I'll walk you up to the front. Another officer came in, presumably to take Missy to her cell, while Ben walked me up to the front. I didn't say anything until we were almost to the entrance. Peggy looked at us curiously. Were you going to tell me that the pan that held the frozen fruitcake came from my bakery? Actually, I was going to ask you if there's some way someone could have got one out of the bakery. Do you inventory your pans? Not as a general rule, but I certainly can. I know I ordered a dozen. I have the invoice that I paid for a dozen, but you do know anyone could have seen the pan and ordered one to frame Missy. Maybe her ex-mother-in-law did it. How was she even privy to the conversation anyways? Ben paused. I didn't think he was going to tell me. But then he finally started talking. She was at his house when he was on the phone with Missy. How can you even be sure she's telling the truth? We have a corroborating witness, and that's all I'm going to say. I like Missy, but I have to say, all the evidence is working against her. I sighed. Every fiber of my being said she wasn't guilty. I just needed to figure out who was. I can see the wheels turning in that pretty head of yours. Can you please leave the police work to me? Ben asked. No. What do you mean, no? He looked at me, genuinely surprised. How can you expect me to just sit around and wait for something to happen to clear Missy when she is sitting in jail? You think I'm not going to get to the bottom of this and track down every lead to make sure the information we have is verified? He was a little bit angry. I didn't blame him because I was essentially saying I didn't trust him, but his agenda was different than mine. I, of course, was more biased and convinced Missy was innocent. Of course not. I know you're an excellent sheriff, and you would never put anyone behind bars unless you had concrete reason to do so. But you can't expect me to just sit here while Missy is rotting in jail. I get it. Really, I do. Just promise me you'll be careful. I don't think Missy attacked Boyd or tried to run you two off the road so you could still be in danger. That fact wasn't lost on me. But while Ben didn't necessarily think they were related, I could see how they were. And I was getting to the bottom of this. Chapter 25. The next morning, I was up at dawn. Not my normal time to wake up by any means, but I had been up since about 2 a.m., just tossing and turning. It was ridiculous not to go ahead and get up. Mr. Cuddles was a morning dog and was very excited to go out. I shuffled around the kitchen, fixing my coffee, bleary-eyed with a headache from lack of sleep. Daisy went out with Mr. Cuddles, but Beans was not thrilled about this early morning. Out of all of them, Beans was the only one who never woke me up. He would probably sleep for 24 hours if he could. When I had gotten out of bed and thrown my robe on, Mr. Cuddles would have bounced up, Daisy would have stood up, and Beans wouldn't have even opened an eye. I loved all their different personalities. My coffee finished brewing. I poured a cup, putting in a liberal splash of pumpkin spice creamer, and then let the dogs in. They were patiently waiting outside the door, their panting breath fogging up the glass. The three of them immediately went to their food bowls, as was the normal morning routine. It was earlier than their regular breakfast, but I gave them a little bit of kibble. There you guys go, just a little pre-breakfast snack. Beans trotted into the kitchen. Leave it to him to hear food being put in a bowl and decide that was worth waking up for. I fed him and then went and sat down at the kitchen table with a pad of paper and a pen in front of me. It was time to make a list of everything I knew and the information I still needed to find out. Talking to the 2 other Santa candidates was top on my list. Maybe one of them had been upset they were passed over for the job and they wanted to get rid of Ed so the job opened up again. Just as important was figuring out who had made the fruitcake and who had gotten into the bakery to steal one of my pans. On the way home from the police station last night, I had stopped by the bakery, even though Chelsea had already left and taken the dogs and beans back to my house. I just had to count those pans. And sure enough, one was missing. Someone was definitely trying to frame Missy. It was too early to call, so I sent each of the Santa candidates an email giving them my number. I told them I owned a pet bakery and was looking for a Santa. It was a bit of a white lie, but maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. Pictures with Santa and your pet. People would go crazy for that. I finally got up, showered, and headed to town. It was still a few hours from opening. That would give me time to get some baking done. Chelsea had offered to open for me and work, plus watch the animals so I could have some freedom to investigate. I didn't want to take advantage of my friend, so I had compromised. Chelsea was going to come in at noon. I was lucky to have such a good friend and hoped I could return the favor someday. When I got to the bakery, I cranked some Christmas music. Mr. Cuddles, Daisy, and Beans went to their respective beds and fell back asleep. I shook my head. It must have been nice. I wasn't tired, but by that afternoon, I would need more coffee to keep me up. I spent the next hour mixing up the batter for our main staples and setting them to bake. Then I played around with some recipes for January's pupcake of the week. I really tried to stay a month ahead in my weekly unique creations. Sometimes it took a lot of trial and error. When I saw it was only 20 minutes until open, I quickly cleaned up my mess and then went to brew coffee. I sat down and grabbed my phone to check my email. One of the Santa candidates, Andrew Sims, had responded and said to call him any time. It was now only 10 minutes to open, but it had started to snow outside. I doubted I would have anyone beating down my door right at 10 o'clock, so I dialed his number, hoping he would be willing to talk and wasn't overly long-winded. It rang twice. And he answered. "Hi, Andrew. It's Tillie Moore. Thank you for responding to my email so quickly." Of course. Playing Santa is such a seasonal thing. You have to jump on every opportunity. Ho, 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 he said in a really upbeat voice. It took me a second to figure out what he was talking about. I blamed my tired brain. Yes, I was wondering if you were free at all in the next 2 weeks to come in for an afternoon. Like I said in my email, I own a pet bakery and I had this last-minute idea that pet parents would enjoy getting pictures taken with their fur babies. I think it's a great idea. I have Thursday the 13th open, or that, following Thursday or Friday. Unfortunately, I don't have anything open on the weekends. Those book up first. I totally understand. Plus, I know this is last minute. Why don't we do Thursday the 13th? We got the details sorted out. Even though this hadn't been my initial motivation for contacting him, I was kind of excited about doing this. If nothing else, it would be great social media exposure. Before you go, can I ask you a question? I asked. Sure. Fire away. Have you heard about what's happened here in Sweet Haven with the former Santa? I did. It's so sad. But I heard they already arrested someone for that. They did, but I'm not so sure she did it. I wasn't exactly sure how to ask him how badly he had wanted that job without it seeming like I was accusing him, but in the few seconds we paused, he must have made the connection. You don't think someone wanted to get him out of the way so they could be Santa, do you? Some of the jolly tone had left his voice. I'll be honest, it crossed my mind. I didn't realize until this happened how cutthroat the Santa business is. I hoped he didn't get offended and hang up on me. You got that right. When I first decided I wanted to try the Santa thing, I had no idea it would be like this. There is a lot of competition out there for the good gigs, and I have to admit, Sweet Haven's Holiday Jubilee is a good gig. What constitutes a good gig? Promise to pay. But us Santas don't go into this business for the pay. We go into the business for the fun. In this area, the Sweet Haven Holiday Jubilee has the most attendance, therefore the most kids, and the most fun. But I can assure you it wasn't me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to infer that it might be you. But that's why you contacted me, right? I hoped he wouldn't cancel on me. While I'd had my suspicions, I did think having a Santa at the bakery was a good business move. Yes, I did contact you and the other candidate, but I really do want you to come play Santa at my bakery. There were 2 other candidates, weren't there? Yes, but one is currently an elf at the Jubilee, so I've talked to him. Ah, yes, Wyatt. Now, if I was a betting man, I would put my money on him. The Santa Claus community is a small one, and he is not what one would call a team player. I can tell you when the murder happened, I was at an event, and I know the other candidate, Lawrence Tillie, pretty well, and this is just a fun side job for him. He's not a serious Santa, so I can't see him doing anything to get a job, much less murder someone. Weren't all Santa gigs a fun side job? Which just showed how little I really knew of the cutthroat Santa industry. Please tell me you'll still come on the 13th, I asked. Absolutely. I never turn down a Santa gig, if I can help it. We got off the phone. Even though I only had his word for it, he was so forthcoming and not very bothered by my initial intent. I just didn't feel like he could have killed Ed. Ben might not agree with my less than objective approach, but I trusted my gut. It also reinforced that things seemed to always go back to Wyatt. I needed to talk to him again. Chapter 26. When Chelsea came in to help me at noon, I headed down to the Sweet Haven coffee shop. I needed a latte, and I hoped Hillary was in. My plan was to head to the Jubilee site and talk to Wyatt again. Maybe she would want to go with me. I pushed open the door. The delicious fragrance of coffee hit my nose. Back in Alabama, where I had spent most of my life, I had a friend who hadn't liked the actual taste of coffee but loved the smell of it. While I couldn't really understand someone not liking the different flavors, that almost seemed unfathomable to me. At least she liked the scent. It redeemed her just a little. Hillary looked up from behind the counter just as I walked in. She smiled and gave me a wave. "How is Missy holding up?" she asked when I reached the counter. "About as well as you can expect. I got to see her last night for a little bit, and she was beside herself. It was horrible seeing her there and feeling helpless. You've been trying your best to help her. Don't be so hard on yourself." "I know. That's actually what I came here for. Well, besides the fact that I need a latte because I didn't get much sleep last night and I need caffeine." "Do you want a gingerbread latte with an extra shot?" "That would be perfect." Hillary started making my latte. I waited until the machine quieted down before saying anything else. "I don't know what kind of coverage you have today, but I'm going to head over to the Jubilee to talk to Wyatt again. He really is the only one with anything to gain by killing Ed because he wanted to be Santa really bad. And it would make sense. Once they brought Boyd back, he might have wanted to get Boyd out of the way. I thought if I talked to him again with an objective third party, you might pick up on something." "You can count me in. Tiffany is coming into work in just a few minutes, and I was going to go back and work on some admin stuff. I didn't plan on being out on the floor, so they can totally cover." "I don't want to take you away from work if you need to be here," I said. "Are you kidding me? Anything to get me out of admin work, I'm willing to do. I hate sitting behind the computer." "Perfect. Then I can just sit here and drink my latte until you're ready." It wasn't long before Hillary and I were headed out to the Jubilee. I was starting to feel more alert, though I was afraid I would soon go beyond alert to wired. By the time Hillary was ready to leave, I had drunk half of my latte, and she topped me off before we left. I often drank coffee all day, but I normally switched to decaf after the first few cups. Well, at least I wouldn't fall asleep. We pulled into the parking lot, a space 2 doors down from Wyatt's truck where he was getting out. I didn't rush. Instead, I took a sip of my latte. Hillary looked over at me. "Are we getting out?" "In a second. I want him to get a little farther away so I can look at his truck," Hillary nodded. When Wyatt went through the entry, I figured we were safe. I opened my door to get out, and Hillary followed suit. We walked over to Wyatt's truck. The front grille, along with the front right side of the bumper, had damage to it. "Do you think this looks like recent damage?" I said to Hillary. "Honestly, I really have no idea, except I guess if it was older damage, it would be dirtier. Look at the areas where the paint is chipped. It's shiny." "I think you're right." I handed her my latte and pulled my phone out of my crossbody bag. Ben would need pictures for evidence. When I was done, we headed back toward the Jubilee. "Are you going to say something to him about the damage?" Hillary asked. "I don't know. If it comes up organically, maybe. He is a hothead to begin with. The last thing I want is to set him off because then he won't be willing to talk." "I feel like every time I come here, I see something new," Hillary said. We walked to the area housing Santa and his elves. I agree. And honestly, I haven't had a lot of time to just look around because of everything that's been happening. You need to make sure you take some time. Sharon does such an amazing job at this event. That she does. Just the fact that she was able to get a new tree, outlet, and ornaments in such a short time was miraculous, I said. We entered the building through the back, where the dressing rooms were. I knocked on the door. Amanda's voice called out for us to come in. She was already in uniform, but I didn't see Wyatt. "Hi, Tillie," she said. "Hi, Amanda. This is my friend Hillary. Is Wyatt around?" He ran out to get his sewing kit from his car. He had a little tear in his uniform, and he is very particular about the thread he uses. Apparently the kind he likes we did have here. Amanda wasn't unkind, but by her tone and the roll of her eyes, she thought Wyatt was a little over the top. "Then can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "We have 30 minutes before we have to go out, and I'm ready." "I know you told me before that you didn't have any idea where the fruitcake came from," I said. "But I just wanted to ask again, are you sure? You don't remember anyone dropping anything off? That maybe you just didn't see what they had?" Amanda tilted her head and crossed her arms. She was thinking. So I didn't say anything, not wanting to interrupt her train of thought. "No. The only person besides me, Wyatt and Ed, who were even in the dressing room, was Sharon. But she didn't bring fruitcake." "What did she stop in for then?" "I'm not exactly sure, but I felt it was to give Ed a pep talk. She took him in the back dressing room and shut the door. When she came out, they were all smiles, so whatever it was wasn't bad." "And she didn't have anything with her?" "Just this big tote bag she always carried around. I swear it had everything you might ever need in it, from tools to snacks. That woman thought of everything." If she thought of everything, maybe she had brought the fruitcake. But there would be no motivation that Sharon would have had for killing Ed. It had just made everything that much more difficult for her. "What are you doing here again?" Wyatt asked, walking in. He glanced at me and Hillary. At least he was consistent, grouchy as usual. "I just wanted to ask you and Amanda about the fruitcake, and if you knew how it could have gotten here." "Like I told you last time, no idea." "Do either of you know anyone that even makes fruitcake?" Hillary asked. "I haven't touched the stuff since my grandma made me in 1985, Wyatt said. "I've never had it because it just doesn't even look appealing." Amanda looked at Wyatt, but he was focused on sewing the rip in his jacket. "But didn't Sharon make a cookie version of fruit bread last year?" He did not acknowledge her. "Wyatt," she said again, frustration building in her voice. He really did lack people skills. "Yeah, I think so, maybe. I just remember the cookie table. They were the ones that no one touched." Amanda turned toward us. "Sorry, I couldn't be of more help. Don't worry about it. Have fun today and tell Boyd we said hi." We didn't speak until we made it out of the building. You're right. Wyatt is a grouch. Makes you wonder why he chooses to be one of Santa's elves. You would think someone with such a cranky disposition wouldn't want to do something so joyful, Hillary said. I know. It certainly doesn't fit his personality. Do you think when Sharon took Ed back to talk to him in private, she gave him a fruitcake that was in her bag? She could have. I know that tote Amanda was talking about, and it's huge. But this is Sharon's life's work. Why would she want to do anything to jeopardize the Jubilee? Hillary asked. I was thinking the exact same thing, but it might be worth asking her, just see what she said to him, and if she did make fruitcake cookies last year. I was grasping at straws. Maybe when I sent Ben the pictures of Wyatt's damaged vehicle, I could convince him to take another look and find out if Wyatt was guilty of the attacks on Boyd at the very least. Chapter 27. The next morning, I was at the bakery and feeling a little antsy. I was making up super cute Christmas tree baskets they would sell, but I almost felt trapped, or maybe it was just because I was by myself. Since I had hired Missy, I hadn't often been in the bakery by myself, at least not for very long. Between knowing I was going to be here all day and feeling like a failure because I was no closer to figuring out who killed Ed, I was having a hard time focusing on the task at hand. I finally finished the last 2 baskets, fluffing the bows and setting them on the display table, but I couldn't help but feel a little sad. The gift baskets had been Missy's idea, and now she wasn't even here to see how well they were being received by customers. I turned around and went back to the counter, stepping over Beans. In the few short minutes I'd walked out from behind the counter, Beans had decided to get off his bed and sprawl right in my way. He did that a lot, and I wasn't sure if it was on purpose or by accident. Beans had a bit of a naughty streak, so my guess was it was on purpose. I leaned down to pet him, and he gave out a soft sigh. He was totally worth the aggravation. The jingle bells I had put in my front door for the season rang. I stood up. It wasn't a customer walking in, but rather Boyd. Not to sound greedy, but please tell me one of those coffees in your hand is for me, I said. It's not greedy to ask someone who has 2 coffees in their hands that question, especially when it's a balmy 10 degrees outside. I don't know about you, but I am well and need to be drinking something warm all day in this weather. Boyd walked over to the counter and handed me my coffee. At first, I just wrapped my hands around the cup, enjoying the warmth. Then I took a sip, letting the warm latte slide down my throat. Somehow, it instantly made me feel better. I don't know what I'm going to do after the holidays when Hillary doesn't carry gingerbread lattes anymore, I said. Do you think if she had gingerbread lattes all year, you wouldn't want them as much? I love being Santa, but part of the magic for me is that you can't get it year-round. That's a good point. I know I feel that way about everything pumpkin. When October rolls around, I can't wait for pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin pie, pumpkin cheesecake, pumpkin muffins. You get the point. If I had pumpkin on a random day in February, it just wouldn't be as special. Anyways, thank you so much for the coffee. You're welcome, Boyd said. I figured you were here alone, and I am free until 2. I thought I could come here and keep you company, and you could put me to work. Really? You want to stay here and help me work? You don't have to do that. I know. But I don't have anything else to do, and I'm always up for learning something new. Though I warn you, my baking skills aren't the best. I laughed. That's okay. If you're serious about helping. I did want to rearrange the front of the store to make the gift tables more prominent, and it's much easier with 2 people. I'm serious. Just show me where to hang up my coat. I took Boyd to the employee area to put away his things. He insisted on wearing an apron, even though it barely tied in the back. Boyd looked cute, and I was excited to have someone to talk to. Have you happened to see Wyatt's truck? I asked him. You mean the damage to it? Yeah, I saw it. Don't you find it a little suspicious? It looks fairly recent. It is fairly recent. Oh, so you know what happened? I asked. He let someone borrow his car and they hit something. When was this? A few days ago. A few days ago, as in the same day someone tried to run us off the road? I asked. Boyd stopped moving the shelf. He had been slowly sliding across the floor. You know, it probably was. When I had sent the pictures of Wyatt's truck to Ben last night, he hadn't seemed too interested in my theory about Wyatt being the one to run us off the road. Now it made sense. He had known Wyatt wasn't the one who had done the damage. Do you know who borrowed his car? I didn't ask, but I can. You think whoever he lent his truck to tried to run us off the road? It's as good of a guess as any right now. Boyd nodded and pulled his phone out of the front pocket of his shirt. He used one finger to type out a message. It's amazing that I can send a message like this. We didn't even have a phone in the house I grew up in until I was 10. Technology has made great advances. I just hope I can keep up with it, I said. Boyd put his phone back in his pocket. He had just started to move the shelf again when the phone pinged, signaling he had a message. Boyd pulled out the phone, read the message, and looked at me. It was Sharon who borrowed his truck. She needed to go pick up some boxes of Santa hats that she ordered to give out to the kids, and she asked to borrow his truck so she would only need to make one trip. There goes that theory, I guess. I can't imagine Sharon having any reason to run us off the road, I said. Boyd agreed with me. We went back to moving things around. When it was finally the way I wanted it, we went back to the counter where our coffees were for a little break. It's usually not this slow. I bet the cold weather is keeping everyone inside today. I reached for my phone, which was sitting next to the cash register, and checked my email. A message was waiting for me, making my heart race just a little bit. That other Santa just got back to me, Lawrence Tillie. He said to go ahead and give him a call. Then what are you waiting for? Boyd asked impatiently, but with a smile on his face. I understood where he was coming from, since I was just as anxious to figure this out. After writing the number down, I closed out my email and dialed. Lawrence picked up on the first ring. Hello, he said. Hi there. This is Tillie Moore. Did I catch you at a good time? You sure did. Just sitting here, drinking my coffee. You said you needed a Santa? I'm really booked, but depending on the day, I might be able to squeeze you in. Much like with Andrew, the other Santa I had contacted, I felt a little bit guilty making them think they might have a job and not giving them one. I totally understand. This was a last-minute idea, so why don't you tell me what you might have available? All of my nights and weekends are full, but I still have a few lunchtime, early afternoon dates available. That would work. I'm just looking for a couple hours. We went back and forth with some dates and the details. I figured it might be a good idea to have a couple of different days and times to better accommodate different schedules. So you're in Sweet Haven? He said when I gave him the address to the bakery. Is that a problem? No, I just have an ex-girlfriend in town who I'm not on the friendliest terms with, but she doesn't have any pets, so I doubt we'll run into each other. Hopefully not, since you will just be here a couple of hours. I can understand how that might be uncomfortable. Not so much uncomfortable for me. I just wouldn't want her to disrupt your business. She's a bit of a hothead, and we didn't end on good terms. That made me a little nervous because I didn't want my business disrupted either. May I ask you her name? If she doesn't have any pets, you're probably right that she doesn't come in here, but it is a small town. I don't mind. Her name is Amanda. I put my phone to my chest and whispered to Boyd, Santa's ex-girlfriend is Amanda. I put the phone back to my ear. I do know her. She's an elf at the holiday Jubilee, but she's never been in here, so I think you're safe. She's obsessed with everything Christmas, so you're right. She's not going to leave the Jubilee to go shopping. That was why we broke up. She was so fixated on being an elf and me being Santa. When I didn't get the job for the Sweet Haven holiday Jubilee Santa, she went bonkers. I don't need that kind of drama. Anyways, sorry to bore you with my personal life. I will see you on the 20th at noon. The few times I had spoken with Amanda, she didn't seem nearly as obsessed with Christmas as Wyatt. Was she just hiding it? If she was that upset, her boyfriend didn't get the job as Santa and then he broke up with her, could that have driven her to the point of murder? Chapter 28. I don't know. I've known Amanda for a while, and yes, she's a little obsessed with Christmas, but so are Wyatt and myself. Sharon is too, for that matter. Why else would anyone want to be Santa, an elf, or put on a big production like this every year? Just because we're all a little Christmas crazy doesn't mean we're crazy enough to the point we would kill someone. I loved Boyd's big heart and wanted to agree with him. But he was being a little naive. Or maybe his emotions were clouding his objectivity. The same way I was certain Missy had not murdered anyone was the way he seemed to feel about Amanda and Wyatt. When we were close to people, We didn't want to think they could be murderers. It all comes down to motive. I know the sheriff thinks Missy's motive was because she was angry at Ed for him wanting the engagement ring back. Wyatt is desperate to be Santa and not an elf, and Amanda could have been angry that her boyfriend didn't get the job. Then what would be Sharon's motive if you think she borrowed Wyatt's truck and tried to run us off the road, and then there's whoever hit me over the head, Boyd said. I admit, that part has me stumped. I don't think Sharon would run us off the road, which means it would have to be a coincidence that she ran into something with Wyatt's truck the same day someone ran us off the road. Boyd stayed another hour until he had to leave to go to the holiday Jubilee and be Santa Claus. I only had a couple more hours to go, but I felt lonely, even though I had Mr. Cuddles, Beans, and Daisy with me. While they provided great company, they weren't always the best conversationalists. My frustration over not being any further ahead toward knowing who might have killed Ed was getting to me. Closing time couldn't come soon enough. I locked the door in record time before bundling up and stopping by the cafe to get a latte before I headed to the holiday Jubilee. My plan was to talk to Amanda about Lawrence and see what her reaction was. Hillary was already gone for the day, so I didn't stay to chat. I had toyed with running Mr. Cuddles, Daisy, and Beans home before heading to the Jubilee, but it was dog-friendly, and all of them liked to be outside with people. Plus, I had left them at home, or with Chelsea a lot lately, and I felt bad. It might not be as easy to talk to Amanda with the three of them with me, but that was okay. I parked and put on my hat and gloves before getting them out of my Jeep. All three were excited. Beans, who liked to pretend he wasn't as well trained as Daisy and Mr. Cuddles, pulled on his leash. Now, Beans, slow down. We're all going to get there soon enough. I resisted the urge to walk faster. That would only encourage them to pull on their leashes harder. The one thing the trainer had instilled in me when I first got Daisy was that with big dogs, you had to be firm and not let their behavior go against their training. It wasn't like you could just pick them up and walk away if they didn't behave. After a few more corrections, Beans settled down. We walked through the entrance, and I turned left, heading over to the dressing rooms. Sharon was talking to someone by the hot chocolate booth. I looked at my watch. There was still plenty of time before Santa and the elves headed to their post. I would take this chance to talk to Sharon and find out what happened to Wyatt's truck. When I approached her, the gentleman she was speaking to walked away. Sharon turned in my direction and broke out in a wide smile. You brought your babies. They're going to get a lot of attention here. May I pet them? Absolutely. Just once you start, they won't want you to stop. I'm not sure I would want to stop. Animals are so calming. I can agree with that. Are things settling down, or is it just crazy and stressful until it's over? It's crazy and stressful until it's over. Has anything else out of the ordinary happened? I asked. No, thank goodness. Now it's just the normal level of crazy and stress. But I dare say I already feel a little bit better after getting some puppy love. It was a good thing Beans didn't understand English, or he would have been offended by that remark. I should probably get going, Sharon said. I need to check in with all the vendors before our community holiday party in a couple days. Can I ask you one quick question? Of course. She stood up. Daisy and Beans immediately pressed up against her. Mr. Cuddles loved attention too, but he was just a little more reserved in seeking it out. I heard that you borrowed Wyatt's truck and got in an accident with it. No. I mean, yes, I borrowed it, but I wasn't the one that damaged it. What do you mean? I asked. I borrowed it to get some boxes of Santa hats that I ordered from my office to here. I asked Wyatt if I could borrow his truck so I could make one trip. My little Subaru sedan just doesn't have much space. I went to the office and had some paperwork to do, and when I came out with the first of the boxes, the truck was gone. Did you call the police? I called Wyatt first, and he said his truck was in the parking lot. He assumed that I had already come back and hadn't come to give him his keys because I wanted to avoid telling him I hit something with his truck. I tried to explain to him that I hadn't hit anything, and I told him what happened, but he didn't believe me, and we haven't really talked since. I told him I would pay for his insurance deductible, even though it wasn't anything I did, but he still won't talk to me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really need to go. I have a lot of people to talk to before we close. Sure. Have a good evening, I said to her back as she rushed away. Sharon really must have been in a hurry. My pets and I turned in the direction of the dressing rooms. I couldn't help but think how odd it was that someone had stolen Wyatt's truck when Sharon had it. Either Sharon was an expert liar, or she was telling the truth, as bizarre as it sounded. Maybe Wyatt hadn't told the police since he had thought it was Sharon. Had someone taken the truck when Sharon had it and used it to try and run Boyd and me off the road, to make it look like Sharon did it? However, someone would have had to have a set of keys. Could Wyatt have let Sharon borrow his truck just to go steal it back? To throw suspicion off himself? That could really go either way. I wasn't that far from the dressing rooms when Boyd and Wyatt walked out with Amanda. They all appeared tense, like something was wrong. Daisy noticed Boyd and gave out a happy bark. Boyd looked in my direction and shook his head ever so slightly. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what, but I was going to find out. I let them get a little ahead of me. Mr. Cuddles, Daisy, and Beans followed them. Chapter 29. Boyd, Wyatt, and Amanda headed behind the backdrop for Santa's chair, which was just a small area for them to warm up during their short breaks. I didn't want to intrude, since I didn't have any business being back there, but I did get close. Maybe I could eavesdrop and get some insight as to what was wrong. Daisy and Beans were getting a little antsy because they wanted to be closer to the people. Mr. Cuddles did too, but with his impeccable training, he didn't show it. I was about to give up when Wyatt raised his voice. I can't believe, in all these years of working together, that you would do this. Who else is better suited than me? Amanda yelled back. What they were talking about? A man walked up to me. He wore a jacket that said event staff. Are they fighting again? Again? Is this something they do often? Yes. This is the second year in a row I have volunteered to make sure things are running smoothly here at the North Pole. I almost asked for a different assignment this year because of last year. Sometimes they would argue so bad, one or the other of them would refuse to go out and entertain the crowd unless the other one apologized. You can imagine asking the other one to apologize didn't work out so well. Wyatt most likely wouldn't apologize to anyone, but Amanda had seemed so mild-mannered every time I had been around her. It kind of surprised me. If I wasn't listening to her scream at Wyatt, I might not have believed it. I didn't realize they had such a contentious relationship. To my knowledge, they never got along. I wouldn't be surprised if part of why Boyd retired is to get away from their constant bickering, though I had been hopeful after I saw Amanda driving Wyatt's truck the other day. I thought maybe there was a turning point in their relationship if he was letting her borrow his vehicle. The man looked at his watch before speaking up again. I'll give them 2 more minutes to settle whatever this is before I have to go in there and try to be the peacemaker. I can go in there if you want. I know them all, and both Amanda and Wyatt like my animals. Maybe it would diffuse some tension. The man shrugged. Go ahead and try. It certainly can't be any worse than what I could do. He walked away and went up to the crowd of people who were lining up, telling them Santa would be out shortly. Not that I particularly wanted to break up the argument, but I did want to talk to them and see what was going on. Come on, guys, I called to Beans, Mr. Cuddles, and Daisy, who were all lying around my feet. They got up, and we stepped toward the room behind the North Pole. I was reaching for the doorknob when a loud boom sounded like a gunshot. A few seconds later, the door on the back opened. Amanda ran out with a gun in her hand. My brain finally made the connection. The staff member had said he witnessed Amanda in Wyatt's truck. The pieces started to fall into place. I rushed into the room hoping she had just fired into the ceiling and not shot Wyatt or Boyd. Is everyone okay? I asked. Boyd stood there with a look of shock on his face. Wyatt was sitting in a chair. He was holding his shoulder. Did she shoot you? I asked. It was a rhetorical question. Blood seeped through his fingers. I looked around for a towel or something to press on the wound and told Boyd to call 911. By this time, the staff member, had poked his head in the room. When he realized what was going on, he also called someone. Yes, but I'm fine. While he might not actually be fine, Wyatt's grumpy attitude was still intact. Make yourself useful and make sure Amanda doesn't get away. I think she's the one who tried to run you and Boyd off the road, and I wouldn't doubt it now if she killed Ed. Amanda had borrowed Wyatt's truck from Sharon to follow me and Boyd, then attempted to run us off the road. I didn't understand what her motive was to hurt Boyd, and I didn't know if Wyatt was right. Had she killed Ed, or was he just thinking her guilty of everything because she shot him? I wanted to get to the bottom of why she had shot him in the first place, but he was right about one thing. We couldn't let her get away. She already had such a head start. There was only one way we might be able to quickly apprehend her. I handed the leashes of Daisy and Beans to Boyd. Is there anything here that was Amanda's, like a scarf, or an elf hat, or anything? I asked. When she had run out the back door, she didn't have a hat on. What do you need that for? Wyatt grumbled. By the gleam in Boyd's eye, he knew exactly what I wanted to do. He ignored Wyatt, reached over and grabbed a red and white sweater. Boyd handed it to me. This is hers. She didn't have it on today, but she left it here yesterday. What do you want with a sweater of hers? Wyatt asked. Mr. Cuddles is a working dog, and his former owner trained him to follow scents. I took a knee next to Mr. Cuddles and offered up the sweater for him to smell. He knew what I wanted. His body vibrated with anticipation. I stood up and we walked outside. While we were exiting the building, a police officer and paramedics rushed in. Ben wasn't among them, but he would be here soon. I let Mr. Cuddles smell the sweater again and then unclipped his leash. Mr. Cuddles didn't move. He was waiting for my command. Find, I said. He took off like a shot, and I hurried after him. Every few seconds, he would look back and make sure I was still there. I was already out of breath. He was probably thinking about how badly I was slowing him down. Just about the point I thought my chest might explode, and I vowed to go back to Chelsea's workout place. Even though the last time had about killed me, Mr. Cuddles stopped and was looking over at a thicket of trees. What is it, boy? I called softly. He let out a low growl. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I didn't know what I was worried about more. Was there some kind of wild animal he was growling at, or was he growling at Amanda hiding somewhere in the thicket? I called out to him again. Mr. Cuddles started walking slowly toward the thicket, ignoring me and growling louder. Voices came from behind me. Reinforcements were on the way. I just wished Mr. Cuddles would quit advancing on whatever it was in the brush. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember how to recall him in German, the language he was trained in. I had been surprised when I could actually remember the word find. The people behind me became louder. Ben and another police officer were coming out of the trees. I took a few steps back to meet them. Before Ben could lecture me about running after Amanda and not leaving it for the police, I spoke up. Mr. Cuddles has something cornered in that group of trees and brush. Even though an idiot could have seen how he was fixated on that patch of trees and growling, there must have been something back there. A twig broke, and Mr. Cuddles bounded into the thicket. Mr. Cuddles, I screamed, afraid something was going to happen to him. A loud growl and another scream that didn't come from me, followed by a series of barks. It was like Mr. Cuddles was saying it was safe to come on back. Ben and his officer must have thought the same thing. You stay here, Ben said. The two men unholstered their guns and walked slowly into the brush. My heart was about to leap out of my chest. A few minutes later, they came out with Amanda in handcuffs and a happy Mr. Cuddles trotting behind them, proud of the great job he had done. After giving him a scratch behind the ears, which was Mr. Cuddles' favorite, I followed Ben, his officer, and Amanda back to the holiday Jubilee. I couldn't wait to find out the truth about everything that had happened. Chapter 30. Due to everything that happened, Sharon closed the North Pole for the evening. Wyatt was sent to the hospital, but the paramedics said the bullet went straight through and didn't cause any major damage. Boyd didn't even argue when Sharon announced she was closing for the night. That told me he was pretty rattled by what had happened. I was too. The only one who didn't seem affected was Mr. Cuddles. Ben and his deputies took Amanda to the station, and Boyd and I followed. We were currently sitting in the lobby, waiting for him to release Missy. "Here you go. I figured you could use something warm." Peggy approached with a tray that had 2 steaming cups of coffee, along with creamer and sugar. "That's so sweet of you. I didn't expect this kind of service at the police station," I said. "It's not just everyone who gets it, but after what you guys went through today, you deserve a little pampering." She set the tray down on the table between the chairs Boyd and I were sitting on. I doctored up our coffee, and when I took a sip, I was even more grateful Peggy had brought it over. "Are you sure you want to wait here with me?" I said to Boyd. Ben said he wasn't sure how long it would take to get her released. "You should go home and get some sleep." I couldn't sleep right now if I wanted to. I can't believe it was Amanda. I thought we had a great relationship, and she seemed like such a sweet girl. She is a sweet girl, a deranged sweet girl. We sipped our coffee, not saying anything. Boyd and I were both too exhausted. However, as tired as I was, I agreed with Boyd. Even if I was at home, snuggling with the dogs and Beans, I wasn't sure I would be able to sleep. It was almost an hour before Ben came out of the back. It made me nervous when Missy wasn't with him. I jumped to my feet. "Where is Missy? Is there an issue?" "No issue. She will be out momentarily. I wanted to check on you two. You had quite a traumatic experience, and you, Tillie, should not have gone after Amanda yourself." "I didn't go myself. I had Mr. Cuddles." I smiled, hoping to convey I was fine by making a joke. Ben gave a slight frown and shook his head. "I don't know what to do with you. How about you, Boyd? Are you okay?" "Physically, I'm fine. I have to admit, I am a little emotionally rattled over it being Amanda. She was one of my elves for years. I just don't see why she would do this." "Me neither," I said. "Ben, is there anything you can share?" "I'm not a doctor, so I can't say for sure, but I have a feeling she will be pleading guilty by reason of insanity. She was babbling in the car on the way to the police station about how it was her birthright to take over the North Pole. And honestly, I just kind of pieced that together because most of her rambling was incoherent." "That's horrible. I feel bad for her," Boyd said. "Did she admit to assaulting Boyd and trying to run us off the road?" I asked. "Not in so many words. Like I said, a lot of her rambling was incoherent. Right now, we have a doctor coming in to see her and a public defender until we can reach family. But based on what she said, that aligns with the evidence we have, I'm pretty confident in her guilt." "Not to be difficult, but you also thought Missy was guilty," I said. "True. All evidence did point her direction. What I really want to know is, how did Amanda get a hold of one of those bread pans that had Missy's fingerprint on it in order to, I assume, try and frame her?" "Actually, I have the answer to that. If Amanda hadn't shot Wyatt and Boyd hadn't called 911, we were already on our way to the holiday Jubilee to talk to her. Your neighbor across the alley installed a new security system, and the cameras reach all the way to your back door. He was reviewing footage yesterday and came across someone we now know was Amanda, picking the lock of your back door. It happened the day before Ed ate the fruitcake, which I'm sure Amanda made for him." "Wow, she put a lot of thought into this diabolical plan. I hope she gets the help she needs," I said. "Me too," Boyd agreed. "No hard feelings here. Life is too short to hold grudges, especially when someone is ill." No wonder Boyd made a great Santa. He really embodied the Christmas spirit, and I had a feeling it wasn't just at Christmas. Hopefully, now things would quiet down, and I would be able to embrace the season and enjoy it. Also, I was hoping to spend more time with Ben. It had been a good year, and I was looking forward to what would happen next. The end. You have just listened to Hijinks and Holly, a Paw Paw's Pet Bakery, Cozy Mystery, Book 4, written and narrated by Lena Turner.